All right, we're going to get going. We are joined tonight by the Sustainability Committee. Thank you guys for coming tonight. I want to first invite up Mark Russo. He's a liaison to a group. Mark, if you want to come up, do a little introduction, and then we're going to hand it right over for a presentation, and we look forward to hear what you guys have for us tonight.
Thank you, Rory. So we have the five members here tonight of the Sustainability Committee. They'll be introducing themselves as they go along. Tony Silbert couldn't be here today. He's working on the West Coast, and we have one opening that we're advertising for. We just need some applicants. So if you know anybody, send them our way. It's a very busy group. We've been doing a lot in the last few months. So without further ado, I'd just like to hand it off to them and introduce themselves. Get good.
Thank you very much, Mark. My name is Janine Silversmith. I'm the vice chair of the committee. Thank you for your time this evening. And I want to just say also that if you looked at the materials beforehand, don't worry, I'm not going to be reading the PowerPoint slides to you. We just really wanted to put everything in one spot, so if you wanted to refer back to it at some point or in preparation of the meeting. So just wanted to say that right from the beginning. If I can have the next slide. The Sustainability Committee, again, text heavy, don't worry. The Sustainability Committee is really our goal, our mission is to advise the town council on anything having to do with basically three major areas: energy conservation, water conservation, and waste management or waste reduction. You can go to the next slide. We decided instead of taking the time to introduce ourselves, we would put our beautiful mugshots here. And as you can tell from our titles, we come from a lot of different backgrounds and expertise and have been involved in this work in some way for either as part of our career or as part of our passions and volunteering. And not pictured there is Mark Russo, who's our wonderful staff liaison. I really just wanted to call attention to the fact that we never feel that anything is left without follow through or anything. So I really just wanted to give Mark a little shout out here. Sorry, Mark, I'm embarrassing you. You can go to the next slide. So we listed some accomplishments so far in the 7 or 8 years since the Sustainability Committee started. I just wanted to bring a few of them up to, draw attention to a few of them. One is that we were involved in supporting the Solarize Rhode Island initiative in town, which helped, I'm sure you know, folks be able to get solar installed on their residences, and we kind of could pool our buying power together. We were also, as you know, the first town that joined the Community Energy Aggregation program, and so the Sustainability Committee was active in that. And also, you'll notice that we've had a number of community forums over the last several years, and the last one was in April of this year as part of the South Kingstown 300th anniversary celebration. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. If you go to the next slide. Yep, thank you. We had 3 speakers come in those 3 areas I was talking about before. Each of them had expertise in them, and they spoke a little bit to the folks in attendance. So that's how we started off the evening. If you can click it one more time, thank you. We had over 40 people attend. Thank you to Vice President Moran, you were there as well, thank you. And it was really a lovely, diverse group of our community that came out. If you click it one more time, what we did was we rotated all of the participants through discussion groups on those 3 areas, so everyone got a chance to brainstorm about them, and really the focus was what could individual residents do and what could the town do. And we compiled all of that, all of the thoughts that came up, and if you go to the next slide, thank you. These were the 4 that rose to the top for energy efficiencies. Incentivize reduction of non-LED lighting. This part I am reading, I apologize. Creating a town green building act. And there's a lot of model for that in different states and a national level. Increase electrification and solar grids, and then maximize energy efficiencies and renewables in our new high school. The next is waste reduction, allowing permitting and zoning for an industrial composting facility in town, as well as creating maybe a municipal composting system, so drop off of individual residents to somewhere like the Rose Hill Transfer Station. And for the last one, water conservation, it's perhaps banning or disincentivizing new inline irrigation systems, negotiating a group rate, like if the town held a town-wide rain barrel program where we could purchase them in bulk and offer them to residents, perhaps even giving a bigger discount to those folks that are lower income, allowing gray water systems, and having rental agencies provide our summer renters with information about how to save water during the summer months. And now I'm going to hand it off to Mark.
So that is a pretty extensive list that you just saw before, and that was great feedback from the participants of the community forum, and we appreciated all of their feedback. But for our committee, we are really targeting a focus area of waste reduction, in particular related to compost. The state Rhode Island Resource Recovery Office has recognized that the landfill will not be here forever. It is filling up, and they just recently changed the capacity estimation from going from 2034 to 2040. So that's good news. We're reducing the waste, but still, we are in a vulnerable position where when that landfill does fill up, we're going to be limited in options within Rhode Island. So we've recognized that we can do some things that perhaps not only can contribute to reducing the amount of waste in the landfill, but could reduce financial costs and tipping fees in other ways. Estimated in the United States about £1 per person per day, about 32,000 residents. That's a lot of weight that if we were all composting that we could reduce here in South Kingstown, but also have an positive economic benefit. So with that said, we're looking for collaboration and support, and we would love to identify opportunities to go after some grants to help do sort of an economic feasibility or potential study, just to better understand what the potential is for reducing food waste and what the economic benefits would be for the town of South Kingstown. That's something that we would support, and we'd like to do that in partnership with the town, obviously. But we also think there's opportunities to pilot various initiatives, not just at the town level, in thinking about what could be done at the town level, but also at a personal level. And we want to identify various programs that we could look at. The nice part is that we wouldn't be reinventing anything. There are towns, municipalities throughout the country that are highly focused on composting. We want to look at those potential opportunities and see what might work well here in South Kingstown. And lastly, we are looking for a staff liaison. Mark is great, but Mark has high expertise in energy efficiency and in buildings. It would be really helpful to have a staff liaison who's focused on waste and waste reduction, so that we could work with that person, especially as we look at going after various grants or developing pilots. So those are our big asks for today. But secondly, we heard a lot from residents and constituents at the community forum. What we really want to hear from you all today is what might be of your priorities, what you're hearing from constituents, and that we could be focusing on in addition to compost, whether it's from the town perspective or from the town council perspective. So we just wanted to open it up for a discussion. We appreciate you taking the time to hear a little bit about our work and what we've been doing, and just wanted to open up for conversation.
All right, thank you, Mark. Janine? Go ahead, Deb.
I'm really excited to hear about wonderful initiatives for the residents. I've been composting for years. I'm a huge convert, and I think both for waste reduction and economically, you're not taking as much trash, even if you pay, per bag, you're reducing your chips. It also is a benefit. There's just less smell in your house. You don't have to, so it's a huge benefit, and I really just recently explained to someone how easy it is and how simple it is, and I think it's a huge feel good for the community to really, it's a way that you can feel like you can contribute I know we all recycle, and people say, do you really think it ends up being recycled? You know, it gets carted out into the tankers and there's not a market for recyclables, but there really is a use for compost, whether it's, you know, in your own yard or if in a community. But I think both of those would work here. And I think the rain barrel too is also amazing. Unfortunately, last summer we had a wet summer, so, you know, 2 summers ago, we couldn't wait to get rain barrels, and now this summer, we're like, we need umbrellas and boots. So, but I still think we should plan for that, because I think the practice of watering differently is really what we need to do as a community. And again, you feel better about using resources in that way. So I would be excited for that. I'm not sure who the best staff person is. I don't know if you have someone in mind, or you know someone's skill set is not. Obviously, Mark is functioning in another way for you, but
Do you have someone in mind?
you do.
Do you want to share that with us?
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is somebody in town who's focused on waste reduction, in particular on recycling. That might be a good fit for that person. I don't know their name. I'm sorry. I don't mean to call them out either.
Is it a staff person?
A staff person. I think they're.
Jim, do you know who he's talking about?
Oh, recycling coordinator.
Oh.
That's right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead,
I
Pat.
mean, I think just from thematically that makes sense, right? Thinking about recycling and waste in general.
Right.
But we don't have a specific suggestion.
Okay.
One of the programs that I've seen before is with the DEM, where towns can coordinate directly with them to have rain barrel sales, and they're quite affordable. Also, URI has a program on how to build and install rain barrels. So I think, you know, both of those would be like good options for our town. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but I noticed that a number of other towns have coordinated with DEM, so hopefully it won't be that, you know, very complicated.
And I know one of the considerations with having a rain barrel sale is storage of the rain barrels. So obviously that would be something we'd have to consider, like where in town that they would be stored before residents went to pick them up. And also, it was a really rainy summer, so now all winter long, my indoor plants are going to get rain barrel water.
Right. What about just brainstorming a little bit, running some classes through the Guild to teach composting 101, to teach, you know, maybe a rain barrel class, and that maybe you know, pay the $25 and you get it refunded when you get your composting bin. I got mine at East Farm. Actually, I have 2, because one you fill and one you cook. So, and I did it through a program there. So I think people might not know where to go. I bought one on Amazon just last week for a friend. So that was $50. So that, I don't know where people's price points are, but you can, in just composting, reduce what if you pay per bag, it will pay for itself, I think. Because we don't really produce any trash. If you really recycle and you really compost, there really isn't anything left.
So you got some, in addition to composting, you got some things listed here that I think could potentially be an easy lift for the council to sort of put something in place, like a zoning ordinance perhaps, but incentivize reduction of non-LED lighting. I like that. What kind of ideas do you have for certain incentives to sort of incentivize people to no longer do that? Do you have things in mind that are sort of within our power as the council?
There is a program through Rhode Island Energy where you can have your home or office assessed, and then they'll do the work for you. So there is a big incentive already there. I think it's just a matter of folks either not knowing about that or not being able to tap into it if they're renters. I would imagine that renters can't take advantage of that. I'm not sure, actually. But yeah, that is one one already existing program that Steve, who spoke at the community forum, brought up. So that's on a residential level. I wonder if there's something we could push out, like through the town, just to educate people about how to take advantage of that program. So that's one idea.
How about something in addition that the town could impose on those who are using the LED lighting to sort of de-incentivize them from using it?
Well, I think we want them to use LED lighting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or the non-LED, sorry.
Yeah, the compact fluorescents. Well, the thing is, the market saturation of LED, it's just there. So if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, 94% of the light bulbs on the shelf are LED lighting. So I think from a lighting perspective, I think that there's good stuff in place. There's good incentives for residents to take advantage of, where Rise Engineering can come out, do an audit of your home, and get those assessments. We're crushing it on the municipal side. The work that you all have done in the schools and all of your buildings, you have updated almost everything. I don't think there's much more that you can do as a municipality. I think the interesting piece that was discussed at the forum was recognizing that there are core institutional entities like the hospital that could use upgrades. So looking at if the power goes down, what happens to the hospital, and they have backup generators, but is there additional opportunities for storage, additional upgrades for energy efficiency in general? That was an interesting conversation at the forum itself. So I think that the good news, in town, you're doing really well with all the municipal buildings. I think an opportunity to engage the general public in taking advantage of all the incentives that are coming down the pike, that are here already, but also that are coming down the pike with all of the ARPA funding that is available and the infrastructure dollars. So I think it's about raising awareness, maybe similar to the classes, or just helping the town promote the incentives and opportunities that are already out there for residents. Yeah. Rhode Island's one of the top energy efficiency states in the country.
Nice.
I think we have a great opportunity now with a couple of extra months to think about our school and how we might be able to increase our use of sustainable resources and maybe get some grants. So I would be very interested in seeing if we could maybe use this extra time to better our situation with the planning of our new high school.
So we want to go back to the brainstorm about the classes at the Guild. How comfortable do you feel your volunteers are? Would that be something you would want to do? Would we have to get someone else, or do we need to try to look to bring someone on board? I know you're environmental education.
So I personally don't have like the expertise in all three of those areas, but this state is flush with them, and this town is really flush with
Yeah.
them. So I don't think it's a hard lift. I would think it's better to have the experts come in, like we did for the community forum, from resource recovery to talk about waste. People who can talk more intelligently than I can about composting and how to do it. I think also there is an opportunity with composting to build our awareness and education in this town on how to do it on a town-wide platform. I mean, I can compost in my backyard, and I love doing that for a long time, but there's only certain things you can do in your backyard if you have a backyard. But if there was, a system in place, for example, and I happen to use this company and I have nothing to gain by just throwing it out there, but Black Earth Composting, will pick up your compost. If you're willing to pay for it, it could be a lot less expensive, and it could help the town a lot more if that were centralized in this town. So, sorry, I answered your question and then I shifted to something
That's
else I
okay.
wanted to make sure
Following.
we said. But I do think that there are experts in this state and in this town that could really speak to all three of those areas.
So you're saying the Guild classes would be for one-off residential people who want to learn and do it, but you also want a macro program where we're bringing things to a common site or people are commonly picking up. So it's really two great programs, right? That's what you said, right?
Yeah, I think we have to think on a residential level as well as a municipal level, especially when it comes to composting.
I agree.
Yeah, I would just add, on the municipal level, I think that's why we want to do the feasibility study, to see whether it's actually practical or not to do something at municipal scale. Not.
How much you think you need allocated from the council to do the feasibility study?
That's a great question. You know, that would probably be in the range of around 50 to 75,000. I don't think that would be from the. I think there are grants out there that we can go after to do the feasibility study. I think
Okay.
that's where the collaboration could come in. We didn't even think of asking about that. But we are, right? Just because I think the last one that was done was in 1983, specifically focusing on compost, or 84. So it's been a while, and I think the state of Rhode Island, or Rhode Island Resource Recovery, just completed one for statewide level, and came back saying the infrastructure to develop that statewide is difficult, and so they're really asking for towns to start to think about it, how they can be focused on reducing food waste at the local level. So I think we would want to go after some grants to identify and do the feasibility study, and see what sort of infrastructure would be needed and what that would cost. And like I said, the nice part is that there's other towns that have blazed these trails and they've done this work before. I don't think we need to reinvent anything.
Is there a town in Rhode Island that has a macro composting program? You're nodding, so yes? I'm just not familiar, so. Which town did you say? I didn't hear you. Middletown, okay.
Jim's a founding member of the Sustainability, just retired from the committee.
So possibly Middletown would be a
Possibly
model.
Middletown, but I think that's in working collaboration with a private entity. But I don't think in the way that we're thinking of like a full town initiative. But I think we will need to learn more.
Is there any part of your work that you're looking at PFAS chemicals in terms of waste reduction?
No,
No.
not that we can recall.
I think there may be some opportunities coming up in that area, particularly with grant money on the local and municipal levels with respect to water systems. And the only thing I've heard so far is the clean water systems coming into the town and out to the residents. I'd also be curious, and you might be interested in whether or not there's some work that can be done with the wastewater system on PFAS as well.
So,
I know that there's resiliency dollars that are out there from Commerce that are coming out. I'm sure the town is actively pursuing those, and part of the resiliency plan that the town has. So I wonder if it would fall under that part rather than on our part on the sustainability side, but definitely something for us to look into.
So I want to go back to, because we talked about composting in a central location, and Rich Bourbonnais is here, and he obviously works with the transfer station. Is there a simpler path to having it happen rather than to do a feasibility study and do all that? Is there any way that it's possible to do it people could bring it to the transfer station, Rich?
Are you asking that the transfer station be used for that purpose?
Well, it makes sense. People bring their recyclables there. They bring their trash there. Is there any opportunity to
There,
do a central collection?
there isn't any space. And I know that you all have discussed that. There is an open area in the back that's reserved for debris management. When we had to create what's called a debris management plan. If there's ever a situation where we have significant destruction due to a storm, that's where the material's being stored, and that's not just tree material, that's a house, let's say. So unfortunately, it's also a brownfield site. It's it's still subject to a lot of restrictions. DEM has already said, listen, Rich, you've identified it because it was brought up with them, that you've identified it as a debris management site, and that's what it's That's what their plan is. So I can't necessarily change that without some significant review with DEM. Nothing's impossible, right? Because we can do what we want, but it would be difficult. My other reservation with using that site is I believe that that Rose Hill Road already sees a lot of truck traffic, and I'd rather not increase that in that area. We are certainly in favor of, and I believe I've met with you all. My goal was to decentralize. In fact, we applied for a grant to get composting bins to distribute, but we were unsuccessful on that grant. We also have to, we're running out of recycle barrels. We had 10,000, if you can believe, and we've given away 10,000 up to we have about 100 left. We can't seem to find a source on that. We're going to start requiring that people have to purchase them on their own, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to move towards composting. If you take this material offline, it benefits us when we're disposing of material, particularly recyclables. We do get a kickback, by the way, when we recycle a certain percentage, and based on the percentage is how much we get kicked back from resource recovery. So, yeah, it's definitely in the back of our mind. I think that there's a site available somewhere. I don't know if it's town property. I certainly think there's a site available somewhere. I just don't think it's that one, unfortunately. But if you've ever been to a place like Earth Care, these are significant operations, right? I mean, if you've ever been down there, they are taking a pile of material and they're moving it over there. And the next day they move it back over there. And it's a continuous aeration and until it gets to the proper temperature when they know that decomposition has happened, and then they can distribute it. These are pretty big operations, and I'd love nothing better than to see something here in town. It'd be awesome. So
let's see what we can do about a feasibility study. We got a grant writer that we have on contract. Let's seek out the possibility if that can be pursued. And I don't mean to bring closure so soon to this meeting here. We do have an interview we have to do before our meeting starts at 7:30.
So,
Go ahead.
but the feasibility study will take time, and the micro can happen. And so I would not want you to focus on the larger change, which is harder to do and longer to do than getting 5 or 10 or 100 new families and households to recycle. So I don't know, your charge does that help you? We haven't really discussed the charge and the mission, and I'm glad that you were here, to give us energy to get behind you, because that's what I feel happened from tonight. As I'm more excited about what you're going to do, I hope that you feel like you kind of know where to go, and if you don't come back around in a structured way, to come anytime and give input, to any meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time.
Oh.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, we do have an interview tonight to conduct for Jeff Elia for appointment to the Zoning Board of Review. Jeff, come on up. Jeff, this will be a fairly quick interview for you in the sake of time. But first off, thank you for your interest.
Sure.
And if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you think you fit into the zoning board well, and why you're interested. So go ahead.
My wife and I have been part-time residents for about 15 years. We've been now full-time residents for about a year and a half. We purchased a property here 15 years ago so our family could be together. About 2 years ago, we decided that this is where we wanted to retire, so we did everything we could to make that house work. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible, so we ended up knocking it down and building a full-time residence that we were able to retire in. And through that process, I was able to work with the town, Mr. Gorman and his department. I found them to be very professional, very, very helpful. And through our conversations, Mr. Gorman and I had several interactions, and he asked me what I did. I told him I was the chief operating officer of a healthcare company in Massachusetts. And over the 25 years I've been there, I've designed, built, and permitted and zoned over 300,000 square feet in medical office buildings. So I was well-versed in that process and everything that went with it. And he asked me if I would ever be interested in participating with the zoning board if an opening came about, and I told him I would. I'd be happy to give back to the community. So we've been in communication over the last 6 months. My wife and I became full-time residents, like I said, about a year and a half ago. And we stayed in contact, and he told me that a position was opening, and I told him I'd be happy to give back to the community. We love it here.
All right, you got good experience. Any questions for Jeff?
Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. You should find out tonight.
All right, great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a nice evening, everyone. Thanks for your time.
All right, it is a little over 7:30, so we're going to get the regular session underway here.
Excuse me, my name is Daryl Geisler, and I was asked to be at this meeting for consideration to a committee for affordable housing.
Okay, Susan, she's not on the agenda.
Well, they called from the town hall and asked me to be here.
Can we reschedule you for the next meeting? Is that all right?
No, because I'm going in for surgery. It's not okay.
All right, we'll fit you in tonight, but we'll start the meeting and then we'll.
So we don't have your application because we didn't know you were coming. So that's why we're sort of in a nebulous zone right here. Can you give us a few minutes? Or
A few minutes. I'm sorry to say that, but
we don't. So the last gentleman that we just interviewed, we had the application in our email, and we don't have that from you, I don't believe. And so we just need a minute.
So if you have a copy of your application, we'll take it. That's fine. Just let us get the meeting started, and then we'll bring you up to do an interview because you can't make it a subsequent date. So just bear with us here. So it's a little after 7:30. It's Monday, October 23rd, regularly scheduled town council meeting. First order of business, as always, pledge of allegiance to the flag. All right. Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. All right, next we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee,
Here.
Council Vice President Marin,
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner,
Here.
Councilwoman Alley.
Here.
It is noted that Councilwoman Rose is absent this evening.
Thank you. All right, that's going to move us to item 4, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve items 4A and B.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes.
I'd like to remove item 5F from the consent agenda.
All right, there's a motion to remove item.
No, it doesn't require.
All right.
Anyone can remove
Okay.
anything from the consent agenda.
All right, do I hear a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of item F?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes.
So I just wanted to take a minute to ask a few questions and have Susan talk a little bit about the farm produce licenses, because they don't come up very often, and I just wanted to highlight how important agriculture is in our community. It's part of our historical background. So can you just talk a little bit about what those licenses involve?
Farm produce licenses are for local farmers who raise crops of some sort on their property and basically sell them at their own property. It's not a retail store of any sort. It's not a farm retail sales market. It's just simply for their own produce.
So Evergreen Acres and Stony Acres Farms are two licenses. Do we have many others? Because these don't come up very often. That's what caught my eye today.
There are a few others in town, yes. Sosnowski Farm is one that comes to mind.
Do they come up annually, like
Yes.
according to their,
All of the licenses come up annually. They're all expire on December 1st.
okay. So I would predict that several others will come between now and December 1st?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do you want to make a motion with respect to item F? Do you want to hear from the applicants listed here? How would you like to proceed?
Motion to approve item 5F.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, before we get to 6 licenses, we can now conduct the interview for the applicant for the Affordable Housing Commission. So if you'd like to come up now, now's the time to.
Could you just please add that interview to your agenda?
Yes.
Motion to add
Second.
Darrell Geisler to the agenda for consideration of appointment to the Affordable Housing Committee.
Do you want to move your microphone down?
I have a voice that doesn't need a microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so first off, thank you for your interest.
It's not for us, but it's for the people who are watching on TV that might not be able to hear you.
All right, so thank you for your interest. We look forward to anyone looking to step forward and serve on any of these boards or commissions under the purview of the council. So we'll just ask you a few questions here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, why you think you'd be a good fit, and if you've been following at all with the board's activities, what do you think are some of the challenges ahead, or what do you think are some of the accomplishments so far? So go ahead.
I grew up here. I've ridden every inch of South County on a horse as a child. I went on to school, got a degree in psychology, turned that degree into therapeutic horseback riding, and in the late 60s was involved in getting therapeutic horseback riding going in the United States. And also incorporated and founded Narragansett Pacers in the 90s, which was the only nationally certified program in the country here in Rhode Island. I also worked a great deal with UMass and a lot of people. I lived in Amherst for a while. I then retired to Maine and opened a housing program called HALT, Hope, Advocacy, Love, and Trust, for people affected by domestic violence and their pets. First in the country, we're blessed to have people kick in and realize how important in a domestic violence situation, children don't need to watch their goldfish flush down the toilet. You know, they need to have a place to bring them, and that's a traumatic time. And I moved back to Rhode Island from Maine with an ill mother, and I am here, and I am very much concerned about the lack of affordable housing nationwide and within my community, and I'm very excited about the fact that South Road School is being considered. I think that's a great thing. There's a park there. Everything's in there already. I mean, as far as I know, there's electricity and water that runs there because it was a school. And you have a park, you have parking. I just think there are things that I want to be involved with to give back to my town, which as a child was something else in the late 40s. So
All
that's
right.
who I am.
Thank you. Any questions?
And I'm here for your consideration. Thank you for seeing me.
Thank you for coming. Any questions from council members? All right, you're off easy tonight. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you.
Find out soon. Thank you.
Actually, you won't be able to make that appointment one way or another until the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mike, can you say that into the microphone?
They're going to be making appointments. The appointment for this position, they'll be able to make at the next meeting,
Which is when?
2 weeks.
November 14th.
Oh, okay.
So Ms. Geisler, you don't necessarily need to come back. Susan, if she is appointed on November 14th, about when might she hear that she is appointed? Would you communicate by letter or email or phone call? Okay. You do have email, so I would check for an email in mid-November, because rather than coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Now we're going to move to item 6, licenses. A is a resolution granting a special events license to conduct the Harvest Moon Bonfire at the Town Beach on Saturday, October 28, 2023, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. to the SK 300th Anniversary Steering Committee. Application by Terry Murphy. Terry?
Good evening. I believe the council is probably aware of this event, as hopefully the rest of the community is as well. This is I'm not sure how many events we're on now, but this is the Harvest Moon Bonfire featuring Matunic, which is nice because a lot of the events have been closer to Wakefield and Peacedale. This one will run from 3 to 8 p.m. on Saturday, October 28th, and will involve hay rides, face painting, entertainment. There will be 2 bands, live bands. There will be a 25-foot bonfire in the picnic area of the Town Beach area. The sponsors are the Village of Matunic, DeStefano Brothers, Liberty Cedar, and the Ryan Center. And of course, we have our wonderful 300th volunteers that are involved in executing the event, along with all public safety folks, UFD, SKPD, and the EMS divisions will all be on hand to ensure public safety. So we're looking forward to a great event on Saturday.
All right.
If there are any questions?
Another
forward
good one
to
lined
it.
up
Thank
that we're
you.
looking forward
So
to.
the weather looks so good, so
For a
70
change on a
degrees, and
Saturday.
it'll be a beautiful night.
Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 6A.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B, a resolution granting a temporary mass gathering permit to Contemporary Theater Company to hold the Wakefield Oktoberfest on Saturday, October 28, 2023. Rain date of Sunday, October 29, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Main Street between Robson Street and Kenyon Avenue. Subject to Rhode Island Department of Transportation approval for the closure of Main Street and stipulations set by the police department and the building official. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Maggie Cady. I'm the general manager at the Contemporary Theater Company. You probably all know about Oktoberfest. We have had bad luck this month with rain every Saturday so far this month, but the weather is looking good for this weekend, so we're really excited. We closed down the street for a couple of hours during the afternoon. We have vendors on the street. We have music on 3 stages, as well as food and drinks and kids' entertainment and the whole gambit in and around Main Street. By the Contemporary Theater Company and Phil's Main Street Grill.
All right.
And we're hopeful that you will approve this and that we'll be able to go forward for a really fun day on Saturday.
Absolutely. I've been wondering when this was going to be with all the rain.
I know. Literally every Saturday this month it has rained. So we're crossing our fingers, but so far it looks really good for this one.
Excellent.
Are you all set for volunteers at admissions? 'Cause
You know.
you didn't hit us up, so I was
We'll take some more if people are interested. Absolutely reach out to us because we can always use a few more volunteers at the door. But we are excited. We've got great bands coming, and it's a big community event, and we like getting people involved. So if anyone would like to come and help at the door, talk to me.
well. Thank you.
All right, should be a fun weekend.
Yeah.
Maggie, thank you for your skill at the microphone. You remind me of the generations of theater kids that learned how to command a room and spent a lot of nights in my house. So good job.
Thank you so much. Well, we have been lucky to be able to work with a lot of wonderful young people like your daughter over the years, and we are excited to get to do events like this that bring more people in and introduce more people to the theater and bring the community together.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Motion to approve item 6B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Good luck. Should be a good one.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's going to bring us to item C, a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct the Muse Tavern Gear and Beer 5K Road Race on Sunday, November 19, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. to Yankee Foods LLC, doing business as Muse Tavern of Main Street, Wakefield, subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured for the event in the amount specified by the finance director, approval by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, proceeds to benefit South County Health. George, welcome.
Well, thank you. Well, after 4 years, some reason we brought this race back. But this hospital had approached us probably a couple years ago when we were still in kind of quarantine phase, and said if we ever would bring it back, would they consider the hospital? So I talked to them over the last year or so, and we agreed that this year we would bring it back because I think it really makes it a true community event then. It's been a very popular race, obviously, over the last, I think we did it 20 years before COVID had hit. And we would attract runners from all over the country, literally. I think as far away as California, we had some runners come from. So it's been a very well-known race, and we're excited to bring it back. It's a lot of work, but I certainly would first like to thank Chief Moynihan for helping us get the route established again. He's been very helpful in that, so we really appreciate that.
All right, any questions for George?
So I do think you're going to have a lot of runners because shrinking it from 6.9 miles, it is much more doable for the average runner. I'll be there running.
Yes.
So challenging myself every race I can to do. So I just have a question about road signs and the lighted signs, because it is a new, not new, but coming back and people don't know. Is there a way that we can use those, I don't know what you call them, those lighted signs that say road closed, road race? Could we inform the
They
public?
do it on Main Street, letting people know.
Yeah.
I think I recall. I'm having trouble remembering all the things because it's been 4 years, but I believe they do put that on Main Street for sure, notifying people of the race.
Right, maybe if we could do it a couple days ahead of time, because people aren't really, you know,
Right, oh.
not in your mind's eye that you're going to have a road race the Sunday before Thanksgiving.
We do put signs out throughout the neighborhoods as well.
Right. Do we have, I think we bought an extra lighted sign for traffic awareness, did we not? I feel like we did. I'm looking to the back. Yes, we did? Okay, so maybe we can use those that weekend if they're not being used in other ways, so that the community, one, is aware that it's going to happen ahead of time, and then for safety on that day, if that's possible. Because
That's up to the chief, but.
I got a thumbs up in the back, so I think it's fine. Okay, thank you.
George, I want to thank you for being such a good community partner. I was there briefly for the kayak event when people came in with their kayaks, and it was a very well-run and very well-managed event. I will not be running, unlike my colleague Deb, but I'll, you know.
You'll cheer her on.
I'll cheer her on.
Big sign, Patty.
Yeah.
George, I got 4 weeks to get my physical fitness up. I think I can do it.
You can do it, Rory.
Well, 4 weeks minus 1 day.
All right. All right, do I hear a motion on this?
Motion to approve item 6.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Appreciate it.
All right, it's going to move us to item D, a resolution granting a Class F 19-hour beverage license to Hera Gallery and Educational Foundation of 10 High Street, Wakefield, for the Pumpkins and Pollinators event on Sunday, October 28, 2023, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Hi,
Welcome. Go ahead.
I'm Donna Gustafson, the treasurer and board member forever. And we're having a fall fundraiser this Saturday, and it happens to be with Oktoberfest that's been, brought to the rain delay and everything. So that's all beneficial because people will be around town walking. We're on 10 High Street. It's called Pumpkins and Pollinators, and it's open to the public. And I'm here because we've applied for a liquor license to serve mead, which I've never heard about. It's some kind of a sweet wine cider kind.
It's made from honey. It's
From honey?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and the president on our board of directors has gotten his TIPS license, so we're all legit, and it'll be served indoors. And there'll be pumpkin carvings by artists, there'll be workshops for children to design pumpkins, and, just a lot of fun activities, crafts, and of course,
Awesome.
Be a good day to move back and forth.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Oktoberfest and this
Right.
event.
What's that?
So it should be a good day to move back and forth to different events. So
Oh,
it's so perfect.
absolutely.
So close to each
Yes,
other.
yes.
There's the path right down the water.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
Awesome.
yep.
Motion to approve item 6D.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Should be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's going to move us to 7, public hearings. 7A, a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the town zoning ordinance, Article 1, establishment of districts and official zoning maps, Section 101, zoning districts, and Article 3, use regulations, Section 301, schedule use regulations table to align the town's medical marijuana regulations with the town's recreational cannabis regulations, and to the town's zoning map to modify areas where medical marijuana can be cultivated, tested, and manufactured in order to align these areas with the town's cannabis uses as shown in Exhibit 1 attached here to, as further described in a memorandum from the planning director to the town manager dated October 17. Jamie?
Thank you, Council President McAtee. This should be relatively familiar to the public as well as the council. The planning department was tasked by the council to review the existing medical marijuana regulations and make them more in compliance or in conformance with the newer regulations you passed for recreational cannabis. So really what we have is 3 distinct areas or classifications. There's cultivation, there's testing and manufacturing, and then there's retail sales. This is just a map of the town. The yellow is highlighting the areas we're talking about this evening in West Kingston, Peacedale, and Wakefield. As it relates to the regulatory changes, they're done in the manner of an overlay zone in existing industrial, commercial, and highway commercial zones. So again, in West Kingstown, there's an existing industrial area, there's an existing recreational marijuana manufacturing, cultivation, and testing zone. You've asked us to mirror the regulations to allow medical to have the same rights and restrictions in that area. So we have done that for West Kingstown. In Peacedale and Wakefield, there were 3 existing industrial zones. In speaking with the council and the planning board, it was their recommendation again to mirror the existing cannabis regulations, and I'll only allow medical marijuana to be tested and or manufactured in those 3 industrial zones. The 4th area is in the Old Tower Hill Highway commercial area, and we presently allow cannabis or recreational marijuana to be sold on a retail basis in that location, and we are just mirroring that as it relates to medical marijuana. And I have a little few details of those areas. So this is the industrial area in West Kingston. There was a change. Again, it's an overlay, so the orange shows the entire industrial area. There are restrictions in the overlay that there would be no areas southeast of the railroad tracks and to the northwest of the railroad tracks in 138. So it's a slightly smaller area than the actual industrial zone. The next area is by the pump house and just north of Peacedale's Rotary. There's an existing industrial complex, and the area in orange shows the existing industrial areas. There's actually three, two on the east side of the state route and one on the south side, which is the painting facility. And again, the area is smaller than the industrial, and it's only to allow manufacturing and testing. No cultivation, no retail sales. The third area is associated with the Peacedale Mills. That is the industrial area shown, and again, the recommendation is just as an overlay to mirror the existing industrial area. Manufacturing, testing, no cultivation, no retail sales. The third industrial area is at the intersection of High Street and 138, High Street and Main Street, just north of Main Street. It's an old industrial complex. Again, manufacturing and testing, no retail, no cultivation. It mirrors the existing recreational marijuana rules. I'm just gonna move forward a little bit. And then the last area that I mentioned was the overlay district associated with retail sales in the highway commercial zone. The existing highway commercial is the outline of purple, and the proposed overlay is the light red or screened red. And the intent there is that all of those parcels have frontage on a state road. So there is no access available within a zone that would enter onto a secondary street. The regulations are written that any retail sale outlet associated either with recreational or medical needs direct access to a state route. And that's a blow up of that area in the highway commercial. And just in summary, we have the cultivation area in West Kingston, the three industrial areas in Peacedale and Wakefield, and then the retail area associated with Old Tower Hill Road. The council members have any questions?
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions?
Not a question, just a thank you to you and the planning board. This was a lot of work to go through, and the memo I found particularly helpful, and it was terrific also to read the findings of fact that included references back to the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
That was very helpful.
I would also like to personally thank Susan Flynn, who does a heavy lift behind the scenes with regards to the legal notices, checking the numeric and alphabetical outlay and cross-references included in the regulations, and she was a huge help in this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
I really want to thank everybody for this because it was a very important issue for the community, and people really let us know how they felt about it. And I feel really good that people were heard and that you guys made it happen as far as the map is concerned. So thank you.
I want to echo that. I think we heard from residents around Frank Ave directly about their feedback about what the marijuana cultivation that's happening there, and we also heard from residents who live on in the neighborhoods behind Old Tower Hill Road. So that those communities really spoke to us, and that helped us to want to shrink and mirror. And we didn't mirror and expand, we mirrored and shrunk the areas a little bit and reduced the amount of impact, hopefully, to the neighbors. And that, I recognize by asking for that, we restarted a very cumbersome process months and months ago, and I really do appreciate that. And I know that there was some pressure because we thought that the Cannabis Board was going to be moving this along. I feel lucky that government sometimes moves a little slow, so we could do a little better by our residents.
Thank you.
Jamie, nicely done. Good to get this over the finish line. Good to see the voice of the people, in fact, the council's decision, the planning board get this over the hump for us to enact. So thank you for that. Good to see this run full circle. But this is a public hearing. So anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this issue specifically, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We'll limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, first come, first serve. All right, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing? Go ahead, Susan.
We need to put into the record that we do have a letter dated October 17th from the Planning Board Chair advising that they have recommended approval of these text amendments and zoning map amendment and providing their findings of fact and findings of consistency with the town's comprehensive plan.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Susan. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 7A?
Motion to approve item 7A as presented.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we're going to move to public hearing 7B, a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the town zoning ordinance, Article 1, Establishment of Districts and Official Zoning Map, Section 101, Zoning Districts, Article 3, Use Regulations, Section 301, Schedule of Use Regulations Table, and Article 4, Dimensional Regulations, Section 401, Schedule of Dimensional Regulations, into the town zoning map to create a new government industrial GI1 zoning district associated with the development of a new emergency medical service facility and land conservation activities as shown on Exhibit 2 attached here to as further described in a memorandum from the planning director to the town manager. It is September 18. Jamie?
So thank you again, Mr. President McEntee. You all have a memo dated September 18, 2023 regarding the subject matter. Again, it is a proposed regulatory change to the zoning ordinance as well as a change to the zoning map. It's associated with Plat 80-1, Lot 18, which is at the intersection of Post Road and Ministerial Road. The primary purpose of this proposed text change and map amendment is again to allow the municipality to move forward with a new proposed EMS building on this site. The town council has entered into a purchase and sales agreement with the land trust, and it's for 1 acre. The town will be using approximately a half to a third. The less we can use, the better we will be. The intent is to return the remaining balance of unused land for EMS back to the land trust for their purposes. Someone may question why we just didn't change the uses in the residential zone. The planning board as well as the planning department thought it would be more onerous to the general public if you opened every single residential property to municipal governmental buildings and emergency services in the entire community as of right versus one particular parcel. So again, I have 2 more slides that just show this on the zoning map. And again, it's a proposed change from R80 to GI1. And this is an aerial photo showing the exact location of that proposed map change. Do the council members have any questions?
To figure out where it is. So is that 138 turning onto Ministerial Road?
No.
So just to the bottom where the cursor is, that is Route 1. Where the intersection is by Lot 10 and 11, that is the intersection with Route 1 and Ministerial Road.
Oh, okay.
Just to the north, where it says Route 110, that is the intersection of Post Road and Ministerial Road.
Is that like Perryville?
That's
or-
the four-way
in Perryville.
stop.
Like 110?
There's a four-way stop right there.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
where we're-
Okay. Yeah, that,
You have an auto repair facility just located to the west of that intersection.
All right, any other questions for Jamie?
Once again, thank you for your hard work. This is a long-time project as well.
Another step closer to getting this done. So good job, Jamie. But this is a public hearing, so anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item specifically, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, anyone who wishes to speak on this item, come on up.
Good evening.
Hi, Norma.
My name is Norma Rolke. I had thought, this is tough. I had thought the last meeting would be the last meeting.
Norma, this item is specific to the zoning change to allow for the EMS facility.
You're
I'm
next.
sorry,
So
what?
if you wish to speak at general public comment, that would be
I
next.
thought that's what you said. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, that would be next, sorry.
Because he sat down, that's why.
So I'll just reiterate, if anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this item that we're taking up right now, I invite you to come on up. This is a public hearing. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I'd like to place on file a letter from the planning board dated October 17th, providing their recommendation for the council to adopt and create the new GI 1 Government Institutional Zoning District, and providing their findings of fact and findings of consistency with the comprehensive community plan for this change.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. All right, we do have a motion. I believe we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 7B?
Motion to approve item 7B.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Jamie. All right, it's going to move us to item 8, public comments. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to do 30 minutes of public comment, then we're going to move to do business, then we're going to come back to public comment. So here, we're just going to ask anyone who wishes to speak on any item whatsoever, come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. And to help time yourself, we do have the clock over here. So with that said, go ahead.
Can I start again? So I thought the last meeting would be the last meeting, because I thought the points that I made, that there was no unfairness, no free ride, and no inequity, as well as the points made by Mary Layden about history and the loss of essential services, and the comments from Amy Crawford, a public road owner who was agreeing that the town should continue plowing. I thought all that would have moved the council to agree to what Jessica Rose suggested in the July meeting, to delay this decision, which was made without knowing anything about the roads. Remember that at that January meeting, the complaint was introduced, and within 15 minutes, with a limited amount of back and forth discussion and a somewhat long presentation by Tom Rutcliffe about the hundreds of thousands of additional dollars it would cost the town to plow the asphalt roads, which ours are not. They are sand and gravel. The decision was made to stop plowing and grading these 14 miles of roads, which the town had been plowing for 70 years. I was somewhat taken aback when Deb chose to respond the way you all have for the past 10 meetings, about private owners who get their roads plowed, get mortgages, get insurance. In other words, that we are making a big deal over nothing. You keep saying the same thing over and over, and because of your rules of engagement, I was not able to speak again, and there was no one else in the room who could comment. But now I will. This council has not treated us fairly. The original meetings with Mr. Manny and Mr. Rutcliffe, whether two or many, talking about roads and plowing, I'm assuming, did not include us. There were also Economic Development Committee meetings about roads where discussions and comments about our roads and laughter about how upset we were going to be when it was discovered that they were not going to be plowed anymore. And that, again, they didn't know about the roads, so they talked about paved roads. Deb, one of the comments you made that night, you said that you had asked for solutions, but we had offered none. But we have. In March, a man offered to say, as he said, why can't we be grandfathered in? And at that meeting, the answer was no. Jessica Rose offered a solution. Look again. Not all private roads are the same. And I thought that was going to happen, but it didn't. And I noticed that in next year's budget, even though our roads are out of the budget, there is about an $800,000 increase in the budget for roads. So taking away this service to us does nothing economically favorably to the town. You said you made a decision that was favorable, that was best for the community. In what way? Our 800 families feel unsafe. If you would drive down our streets, you would see narrow sand and gravel roads with potholes that go around a pond and back onto one paved road. We have been unsuccessful in finding a contractor to plow. Imagine living at the end of such a road in a snowstorm. There is no way out onto the plowed road. Imagine being sick. Imagine being without electricity and heat. Imagine being elderly and alone. And then tell me you have done what is best for the community. I don't think it matters whether these roads are public or private. The town has been doing this little but very important maintenance for 70 years. We do not see a legitimate reason to stop. We have come before you, written to you, been on the agenda. Now you don't let us on the agenda. We has meetings, our issues have been ignored or trivialized. We has asked for the same consideration that was given to Broad Hill, and we are still asking for the same things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak, just come on up. Bob, come on up.
Anyway, Bob Traeger, Succotash Road, and a lot of time up in New Hampshire. I thought I made a choice to come over tonight. My last appearance here was a little rugged at the end, unfortunately. It's probably my fault. I am a little loose with you guys, you know. But I think you know how much I respect what you do. They have a masterpiece on right now, The World on Fire, an appropriate title. Just thinking about the news now, and I am just for a moment while I'm talking, my stomach rolls with the tragedy that this world has got itself into again and again and again and again. And we, the public, are sort of responsible for a lot of it, because we pay the bills. There's no way to really... I just feel that we need to sensitize ourselves to the reality that it isn't that human life is not important. It's a commodity. I mean, I'd love to have a meeting here where we had about 2 hours, and we had a bunch of people to talk about it, because I want to hear other people's opinions. I watch Washington Journal every morning for at least a half an hour, and people call in from all over the country and sometimes all over the world and express their opinion. And they appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. And one of the reasons I come over here is this is one of my little opportunities to say a few things to people that I respect and I know are living the life that the artificial life, I feel. When you watch the news, there aren't too many, how many times have any of us, or maybe they have, if they left our area, experienced what some of these people in the world are experiencing today? It's mind-boggling to me that it has to be that way. And there are key words, the minute you mention military or you mention any certain, I remember when Bush was president, I mean, it was, the patriot. What is patriot? What is a patriot in this country? My God, we got a lot of people in this country that call themselves patriots, and boy, they scare the hell out of me. They scare the hell out of me. The way they think and what they're after, what they want. Okay, I think I did pretty good, because I really don't, there's no sense in getting into anything, and I don't have any, I have strong opinions, but my opinion is not important in the sense that we need to have some joint opinions that make sense. And that's what you guys do here. That's what your job is in the town of South Kingston. And I understand it, and I think it's great. I think it's great. I came over for a moment of sanity. I wondered how you made out, and now it looks like we're back to normal again. Hardly anybody here, a few of the regular people. And I'd love to say more, but thanks for what you do again.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
I just wanted to say, Bob, to follow up on your desire to talk about current events. I know the Senior Center has a current events group where they do talk about events of the day. Are you aware of that? And maybe it's something that you could connect with Director Terry Murphy about and maybe participate, because I think you have a really nice way of bringing people together and moderating. Well, yeah. So were you aware? Yeah. I didn't know if you were aware that I didn't know if you were aware that the Senior Center has a current events group where they do talk about global issues, world issues, national issues. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bob. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on any matter? Feel free to just come on up to the microphone.
Good evening, Thurl Beasley. So, I sent you all an email a few days ago, and it had an Excel spreadsheet in it. And what it said was that if for this coming budget season, between now and April, end of April, if this town council tells the school district, the school committee, that this year they're going to be funded on a per pupil basis, that the amount of money that would be reduced from the property tax transfer for just 1 year, okay? 1 year, we're going to fund you on a per pupil basis. And the reason is, of course, our enrollment's gone down for the last 22 years, every year for 22 years. In this past year, between end of school in June and the opening last month, we lost another 188 students That's the highest drop in enrollment in this town's history. The only other year that was close, I think it was 07, 08, we lost 183 students. Now, when you supposedly level fund, as you been doing, you're not really level funding because every year when you do that, our cost per student has gone up. When the numbers come out for this year, in June of 2025, when those official numbers come up, and they're very easy to calculate, so when those numbers come out, we'll be paying for this year over $30,000 per student. And not only that, when the numbers come out from, they'll also show that for this year, this town of South Kingstown, per pupil, will have paid the highest out-of-district tuition in the state of Rhode Island. We're finally number one at something. We went ahead of Central Falls. So it'll be like $2,100 a student. So that $30,000 we're paying per student, right? The first $2,100 for every student that's here. So it's like everybody, the day they walk into school, they hand you a check for $2,100. You put them all in a bucket and you send it out of town. Now, that's not good. It's like $5 million this year. That's $5 million. East Greenwich is $500,000. Barrington is like $1 million. We're $5 million. We're not going to fix that by nickel and diming this new high school. Now, what I showed you in that email, if you looked at the spreadsheet, was that if you tell the school district that you're going to fund the district on a per pupil basis for 1 year, those savings will cover 85% of the debt service for that high school. And the other 15% will be covered by our students coming back to the high school. So in fact, it'll cost the taxpayers nothing. Zero for the high school. Now, if you decide that, you don't want to do that, then it'll be back to referendum time next year. But next year, for the referendum, it will be saying it'll be a $4 million reduction to the schools, and if it's approved, the taxpayers won't have to pay anything for the high school. So I asked your budget person to look at the numbers, and I'm hoping that that'll be part of the discussion tomorrow night. That's an option that you can use.
All right, Doral.
I have a question. Could I just ask that question of Mr. Beasley so I get some clarification? So I'm looking at your spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And the first tab is fiscal year 2025 municipal MOE adjustment. That's the tab I should be looking at if I want to understand what you're proposing. Okay. So you're at, go ahead.
All right, so let me, the way I set it up, because I
At
thought.
this point, we're over the 5 minutes.
No, but I want to
Motion
answer
to
a
add this
question.
item to the agenda, please.
I want to answer a question. Can I answer a question?
Oh, yeah, we'll add it. We'll let you answer it.
Do
Want
you
me to
wanna
answer it or
add?
not?
You want to add? There. Okay.
Okay. The way I,
So in other words, Doral, if you could explain the contents of your spreadsheet fairly quickly.
yeah, the way I wrote it up was that, like the new high school was already built, okay, that the new high school would be completed and our students would be entering this high school in September of next year, 2024. And therefore, the tax bills that go out next July would reflect the increase of, the building completed, and it would reflect the increase of that building being completed. So it'd be like the full debt service applied to the taxpayer's tax rate. Okay, I know that's not how it's going to work. It's going to work that this is going to take till 2030 before it's open, but it's just an example to show you that if you do this per pupil funding to the schools this coming year, that $4.3 million will cover 85% of that that debt service. So really what it will happen is 85%. So this coming year, if you did that, the tax rate would go down about 65 cents. But over the next 5 years, as the school's being built, every year, a little more debt service because the thing's built, and it's finally
Sort of
done.
prolonged a little too much.
I guess I really just wanted to ask a question. So my question is, so we transfer about 56 million to the schools. So this ask tonight is for the town council to consider reducing that 56 million by 4 million change-ish. So to 50, and then what you're saying is we would start at a new spot at, say, 52 as the transfer, and then each year we could allocate again, starting at a new lower point? Is that what you're at? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the new floor or the new ceiling for the district would be 52, whatever it would be.
Okay.
I used the same calculation as your budget manager.
Okay. So that's what I was just, the simple ask was that. Instead of transferring 56 million, reduce it to 52. Okay.
Come on up.
My name is Joe Martin. I live in South Shore Village. I'm a new resident of town, one of 180 units, which adds about $30 million in ratables to the town. And by definition, we can't have kids. I thought that we had a referendum on this year's budget for the school, and it was accepted that the one that was submitted stays. I have no clue as to what this discussion's about.
Thank you. You are correct.
Last thing, this is a form of election denying, because I voted, everybody else voted, and a decision was made by the town.
So I believe Mr. Beasley is talking about future allocations.
No, somebody talked about changing this year's budget for the schools and squirreling away $4.5 million from this year's budget. Is that what was proposed?
I didn't understand it that way. It's a future budget allocation.
Okay, fine. But the bottom line is the budget for this year. I was in the school board for 16 years in suburban Philadelphia. And it was a very high-performing one. And so the production numbers, whatever you want, college admissions, kids going in the Army and so forth, are pretty well. And it took a lot of money to do that, okay? And that's pretty much the whole story. And I got reelected 4 times. So I'm not sure that you guys are actually politicians, and I love that word, but you appear to have been done what the voters wanted you to do.
That is correct. Thank you. All right. Anyone else wish to come up and speak? All right. Any thoughts from the council table before we move on?
Yep. So I would like to add the communication item that I sent to the town council email address. I guess there was a mix-up, and it's not on there, so I had asked that we discuss the future use of Wakefield School and Watson House. So I'd like to just add that for discussion.
Okay. We have it on the manager's report. You want to wait or you want to move it up?
I asked for it to be on an email because my intention was for us to start the conversation about some of the properties that we own. We hear a lot about the problems. We heard the woman speak about affordable housing. We heard people talk about the schools. And I'm just trying to figure out what solutions we might have by using the town property we have. I want to start the conversation. By putting it on the communication item, as a communication item, the community would know we were talking about it. So I want to add it tonight, and then I want my letter to be as a communication item at the next meeting so that the community knows we're going to continue to have this conversation. I want the community to be involved in the conversation as we talk about how we can possibly solve some of these very challenging issues ahead of us.
So just to be clear, I understand you want it as a communication item, but you think there's a distinction between having it on the manager's report and having it as a communication item?
So the rules of conduct say that any member can put anything on the agenda.
And I'm
As a-
asking you to clarify your intent behind why doing it, because it seems like semantics to me, so go ahead.
So when it's as the town manager's report, there's not a discussion among the members.
Oh, there is always a discussion among members at manager's report.
So I asked, following the process that's been in place since 1999 when I stood,
Yeah, I got no
So-
problem going forward.
I don't
All
understand,
communications communicated
there
from
was
the
a
council will be
mix-up,
included
there
as
was a
communication item.
mix-up about how this agenda was created, and I'm just asking that I add my communication item so we can talk about it tonight properly, and then at the future meeting, we can talk about it.
Okay, so you want to add your communication item to this agenda and add it to the next agenda? Is that correct?
Yes.
I just would like to jump into this conversation because actually I did also too send in an email regarding the Oliver Watson house as well as a separate one on short-term rentals. I don't really have a problem with it being included under the town manager's report because it seems like something that we've been sort of I don't know, I don't really understand why it matters who puts it on there, because it's on there, you know? But I haven't been on
The
it, so-
process for putting things on the agenda, the rules of conduct say that any member can put something on the agenda as new business. We were told 2 weeks ago that we could send an email to the town manager and let him know.
I've assumed that maybe because Jim was on vacation, things got, you know, I didn't see it as a big
So
issue, but.
I'm following the process that's been in place. So I don't know how it got mixed up, but I was under the impression that it would be a communication item so that the 30,000 people in the community would see it on the agenda and say, oh, they're going to have a conversation about this topic. And then it's not there. It's listed as a report out and not a discussion where the 4 or the 5 of us could have.
Okay.
So that's fine going forward. I don't know whatever the mix-up was, I just think it makes sense to be specific as possible. If you want something added on the agenda in a specific location, I think you should suggest it as, I'd like this added as a communication item on such and such a day at a regular scheduled meeting.
Jim, did I speak with you on Monday before you went to London? And what did we talk about?
So the historical perspective on what happened was, on October 2nd, I received 3 emails from Councilwoman Bergner. They went to all the members of the town council, and she requested that these be added to the agenda. I put them on as the town manager's report for the meeting 2 weeks ago. I had a subsequent conversation with Councilwoman Bergner where she requested that if she sent an email to the entire town council, that it be added as a communication item. I did instruct the staff to do that prior to me leaving last Monday. And listen, I'm the town manager, so it's on my shoulders. And it ended up on the town manager's report. So I know I spoke to each one of you individually this weekend so that this does not happen again. And that any member of the town council can email me and ask for an item to be put on either under communication, on the town manager's report, or new business. And that it would not be edited or taken off. Because each member of the town council has a specific vote. So there was some confusion. I'll take responsibility for it, why it ended up back on the town manager's report. But moving forward as a I do request that each member of the council request specifically where they would like their correspondence placed on the communication, town manager's report, or new business.
And this email didn't specify new business. I'm reading from it.
Yeah, I do not believe it specified new business, but I did have a conversation with Councilwoman Bergner where she requested it go on the communication, and I said it would, and it did not.
So I believe we all agree that it's important to be transparent, and that's why I wanted the email on the agenda, so anyone reading the email, the agenda, could know to attend. In fact, I believe there's someone here because they're aware that we might have that conversation. So I don't know what your issue is about following the protocol and the process that has been in place for over 20 years.
I don't have any issue or problem with protocol. I'm a new member to the council, so I don't have the experience, but to me, we have a job to do, and it's on the agenda, and I'm looking forward to discussing it because we've been on tours of the
Correct.
facilities.
So when it's on the town manager's report, it's for discussion. When it's a communication item, the council can then further direct. So I want to have a conversation tonight, and in 2 weeks, I want to have another conversation to continue the conversation.
Very good.
That's all.
Mike?
Sounds good.
Excuse me. Can the council not act on an item that's listed under the manager's report?
You can act.
That's
on-
the implication.
Well, you can act on any item that's on the agenda. It says right up front that the council can act on any item on the agenda. I understand also, though, what your rules of conduct say, and you all have the right to place a communication or new business item on the agenda if you so desire. But when we get to the manager's report, yes, you can, if the item is there, yes, you can act.
And we don't need to belabor this long, but when it's on the town manager's report, there's just a line item, short-term rentals. It could be anything, or it could be the Watson home, could be anything. I specifically said I wanted to talk about the future use of both of those locations.
I actually did also
I know
send
you
in
did.
an extensive email.
I don't understand what the mix-up was.
Right.
I can't speak to what happened to you, but I know that on Monday, I fully expected it. I didn't get a call that there would be any sort of change.
I just wanted to talk about it.
I know,
That's it,
and I did too.
And so are we not going to be able to talk about it now?
We can talk about it, but on the town manager's report, the community, there's not a lot of information there of like what would be the topic or where we're going to go with that.
Yeah.
So
All right.
that's all. You're giving context to 30,000 people.
Yep.
We might know because we may have thought about it and we may have walked out saying something. Who knows what we said to one another?
All right,
I don't know.
We're diving into the minutia pretty heavy here.
Well, however you want to do it is fine.
I think going forward, it makes sense that you should communicate. Any council member who wishes to add an item in any section of the agenda should communicate that specifically, where they would wish it placed, whether it be new business, whether it be communication, whether it be town manager's report. I don't think a blanket message of I want this on the agenda should be interpreted that be it in a certain section, and I think it's reasonable that the manager uses discretion to add it to the manager's report. But going forward, I think it makes sense to use specific language in your email identifying where you'd like it, and that just seems reasonable to me.
That's fine. I just want to say that 2 weeks ago, when it didn't happen from an email, Jim and I had a conversation. He said, just reach out to me if that's what you want. So that's exactly what I did. I'm not assigning blame to anyone. I appreciate that Jim put it on his shoulders, but there was a mix-up. 2 weeks ago, I followed the revised instructions, and there was still a mix-up. I want to just have a conversation about the things we care about, our community, and how we can solve some of the problems that are before us.
Understood.
It's great. It's no other reason but to be transparent to our community.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right, I think we got that settled. All right, we're going to move on to 9 new business.
No.
You want to move up a communication item?
I have
In front of all the
something else.
communications? Oh, go ahead.
And I want to add an agenda item to the next meeting that we amend the rules that it includes new business or community comment. Because the rules of conduct just say new business. So I want to be able to, there's some things we would act on and some things we wouldn't. I just want to make sure I have the ability to do that, and we all have the ability to do that.
I'm not sure I quite follow the request.
I'd like to add an item to next meeting's agenda that we amend the rules of conduct to say that a council person can do new business or a communication item, as Rory just said.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
I'm following and just editing.
Got it.
And as I can request any item in the agenda, I'm doing that.
All right. We're going to move on now to new business. We got a few order of notices, so we're going to refer to you, Mike Ursillo, but we got 9A, a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise by reference for order of notice of public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the town code as shown in Exhibit 3 attached thereto. Just want to give us a brief as to what to expect in the next meeting when it comes to this.
Basically, the purpose of these amendments are, now that we have a municipal court in place, a lot of our ordinances with regard to infractions that would normally go to the district court can now go to the municipal court. This is cleaning all that up so that our ordinances will be consistent with what the municipal court jurisdiction is. And obviously, we can discuss this at the next meeting, but that's basically what it's all about.
All right. Any questions for Mike?
No. Motion
Right.
to approve 9A.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
Just to clarify for the folks that are listening, this is about scheduling a public hearing. We're not passing any ordinance tonight.
Yep. All right, any other discussion? I'll just say that with our municipal court up and running relatively soon, we're getting a lot of ordinances to be in place to align with the start of that. So next meeting, we'll be taking up a few public hearings, which these entail right now.
Council President, just to add on what the solicitor stated, there's been a team working on this to bring to you for the public hearing. They're working hard on it. It has to do, it's the police chief, it's our clerk Emily downstairs, it's the solicitor's office doing a lot of research on fine structures and how we will make the transition from the district court, the traffic tribunal, so forth and so on, to the municipal court. So this is a very positive sign that we're close. We've been working waiting very patiently for this, and we're hoping sometime in mid-December, once all this is done, that we will have a municipal court and a housing court up and running.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B, a resolution amending the town council's rules of conduct, Rule 12, agenda as follows. This is something we spoke at pretty good length at last meeting, so I think we have an idea here. Any thoughts on this one?
Motion to approve item 9B.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I don't have any problem approving this because in 2 weeks, we'll do a little tweak. We can discuss a tweak.
Adds on to this.
Hmm?
What you want to do is, business item, say, or communications item.
Yes.
If you want to do that tonight, you can. It's on, it's.
Oh, let's just do it. Let's get it done.
Your rules in front of you, it would be, town may request a new business or communications item to be placed on the agenda by. You want
There we go.
I'll amend my motion to include that.
Okay.
All right, we got a motion?
Second.
We got a second? Any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Go ahead.
So it says that the agenda will be available for the general public at 4:30. Perhaps we could avoid some of this if the agenda was posted by noon or 2 o'clock, so that when we could review it, instead of it being past the 48-hour deadline, and then staff is scrambling or it's too late to amend or change the agenda, we might be able to do that. So I'd like to consider not having this, I don't want to have the staff send out an email ahead of time and have us approve it, just possibly publishing it prior to the close of the workday, so if there were any changes that needed to be made, we could make them.
Is that feasible? Susan?
If I may, if we post the agenda at 2 o'clock so that it's out there in public for you to review, and then you want changes, we will then have to make changes and repost the agenda. It would be much cleaner if you wanted to see it before it got posted, that we send you a draft and give you a deadline to respond to us so that we can meet our timeline for the official posting by 4:30 on Thursday afternoon before an agenda meeting.
I don't anticipate many changes ever, but this just gives us the ability, if there were something to be addressed, that we have that leeway in the business day.
But
That's
we'd be
all.
scrambling in the last hour of the day to try to get change comments from all of you.
If I could, what does happen in many, many other towns is that a draft version of the agenda goes out to the council ahead of time, just as Susan suggested, with the comment that, hey, here's the draft. If any of you have any comments or changes, get back to me by fill in the blank, such and such a time. That way, you are not scrambling at the last minute.
Yeah.
And this process, where they do it in Barrington, they do it in Bristol, it works beautifully.
Okay.
It gives you the opportunity to look it over and say, hey, something's missing. Then you can call Susan or the manager's office, take care of it, and then she's not scrambling with 10 or 15 minutes to change things around. So if that works for you, Susan.
And it would give the manager the final chance to review the agenda before it gets posted, which he always does.
And, you know, we're sort of talking about this, you know, on the cuff here, but maybe something along the lines of it goes out to them in the morning, the Thursday morning, for instance, and you ask for comments by noon or 1 o'clock or something like that. I'm going to leave that up to you as to how to make it work, but it works well elsewhere.
Does that work?
Well, it is, I don't typically check my town council email during my workday when I'm working, so that will be a challenge. So. Not that. You can do it at the end of the day Wednesday?
I can provide you with a draft agenda at the end of the day Wednesday and give you a noontime deadline to return comments to us, and then Jim can review them and give us the okay to post by 4:30.
I concur with that. I'd rather have all the eyes of the town council on it, and whether it's a draft form or whatever, this way to avoid anything that happened like in the past couple of weeks. But I agree with Susan, who's an expert at this stuff, that I'd rather have a draft out there to look at rather than sending an amended one out, because I've seen her scramble, and my major concern is we missed that deadline, and now we have a major issue with the council meeting, whether we could have it because we missed the deadline.
All right, let's talk about the potential inflexibility of this. Gets sent out end of the day Wednesday. He gets a call from one or two of us, oh, I want this, I want that, whatever, adds it. Someone has a problem with something else by the morning. How can you communicate each change to each council member so quickly in real time? Sounds inflexible to me.
Well, I think there's no perfect scenario here, but I think what we're really looking for is if a council member submitted something they want on the agenda, and I missed it, or Susan missed it, which is pretty unlikely for her to miss it, we can make a change on it, and then we'll send it back out again to the council in a new draft, draft number 2 or whatever. I don't see this as a common occurrence, to be honest with you. We're just trying to avoid any confusion as to where a council member wants something on the agenda, and I did not put it in the right place. That's really what this is about.
What do you guys think?
Sounds like a good, backup plan, I think. If one of us is really concerned about something, we have some time to.
Let me ask a follow-up question, actually. What does the state require for the deadline to file our agenda and post it online? Can you tell me that answer? 48 hours? So if we're going to talk about the
48
potential
hours,
making...
But you can't count weekend or holiday time. That's why it has to be done on a Thursday, because our meetings are on a Monday, and you can't count Saturday and Sunday.
So 48 hours, which is Thursday, 6 p.m.?
Right, but the clerk's office is here until 4:30.
Okay.
Yes, I have had situations in other places where 5 minutes before the deadline, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, we do post it. But as a practical matter, you want to have it posted during the business day.
What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, as we talk more, I'm thinking, state law allows us till 6 p.m. Thursday, but the clerk works till 4:30 Thursday. This thing that we're looking at here, this rules of conduct limits us to 12:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, but now we're talking about allowing us to move things around the agenda up until Thursday at 4:30 p.m.
Actually, I think the proposal is, that's the submission, right? That's just the submission deadline.
Submission of,
And then if things are going to get moved around, you're going to have that opportunity Wednesday night to look at it, and then let Sue and Jim know by 12, by noontime the next day, Thursday, so they then can finalize it to get out for 4:30 on Thursday.
So you have
Right.
until noon on Wednesday to include something in the agenda.
Yeah.
Susan's going to send it out by the end of Wednesday, and then by the end of Thursday, she's going to have a final product out to the community. And we have Wednesday evening, should we want to look at the agenda, to do any, whatever, edits, changes, additions, whatever. I don't think there's going to be any reductions, because none of us can remove anyone else's items. None of us can remove anyone else's items. Additions, anyone can add something to the agenda.
If they get it in by 12 o'clock on Wednesday,
Right.
this is written,
Right.
you just said they can add it Thursday.
I think
Corrections,
that's it, that's the corrections, or, hey, I had sent this in and
Yeah.
somehow it fell between the, yeah.
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
I'm glad you're not confused.
all right. So does this need anything to be in writing here? Or?
I think what you want, have they voted on B yet? All right, so vote on B as amended. This other discussion we've had, we're going to try this out, experiment. I don't think it has to be
No.
reduced. It's just more procedural, that's all.
All right, we do have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. And you get the direction based on the conversation here. All right, we're going to move to item C here.
So I have a question about the review of the agenda. Will that take place on Thursdays?
Usually have the review of the agenda Wednesday evenings around 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. 6 to 7 is the approximate time. And I don't see how that would change.
So the review of the agenda happens on Wednesday evenings?
Yes.
Okay.
All right?
I mean, if there is a change, if something's added or whatever, corrected, obviously I would let each member of the council know somehow.
All right. And just to be clear, under what we discussed, nothing could be deleted from the agenda. Things could only be moved around or potential for to be added, something that slipped through the cracks. Am I interpreting this correct? All right.
Some town councils, the town council president in other cities and towns have the ability, they are responsible for can remove any item from the agenda. I think this town is structured the correct way, where each member is treated individually, they put something on the agenda, and the manager sets the agenda. And I've done it both ways, once in Narragansett one way and once here, and I think this is an appropriate and fair way to do it, the way this town does it right now.
All right. All right, so we're going to move on to item 9C here.
So regarding that agenda meeting, does that need to be added to the rules of conduct? Because it doesn't seem to be outlined, but it seems to be happening. I know it's in place to help the president prepare to lead the meetings. Does that need to be in the rules of conduct?
That's a legal question. Mike, go ahead.
So there are a lot of things that you do procedurally, informally, whatever, and I don't think there's any need, whether it's what we just discussed, which is that the clerk's going to provide you with the agenda the night before, or the fact that there's a meeting that could happen on Wednesday night, or maybe on a Tuesday, or a Thursday morning, whatever. I don't think you need to put that in your rules of procedure. I don't even know if it happens all the time, to be honest with you. I don't know if it even happens every week.
It happens for every meeting. The purpose we did that was because for the efficiency of the town council meetings. It was decided by the town council that they wanted to profile boards and commissions, which that we either had to start the meeting much earlier, or we would brief, the president, vice president, I would, on what's on the agenda, so that to limit the number of questions asked, and this way we could bring the boards and commissions in at 7 to 7:30. So that was the purpose of, once we decided to bring the boards and commissions in at 7 on a regular basis, I'd asked to have a meeting with, so that we could go over the agenda, so that it would run more efficiently and smoothly.
It essentially takes away the work session. We used to walk through the agenda in the work session. Now we have no need to do that. And I think it works well. But if you have a problem with it,
No, I think we're clear on the roles of the president regarding the meeting and the leadership of the meeting.
all right. All right, we good to move on? 9C? All right. A resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice of public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 14, Planning, Article 1 in general, that would readopt Section 14-2 Affordable Housing Fund and eliminate the sunset provision as shown in Exhibit 4 attached here too, and as further described in a memorandum from the planning director to the town manager dated October 16th. Mike, what's this one all about?
So when you adopted this ordinance with regard to Affordable Housing Fund, the council at the time placed a sunset provision in the ordinance. That sunset provision called for a May 1 sunset of 2023. And that happened, so therefore, the ordinance doesn't exist as we sit here today. So this is, I'll call it housekeeping. We want to get this back on the books, so to speak. I think, unless anyone disagrees, that you've been happy with the way this all works. There's no need for a sunset provision. What we're proposing happen is at the next meeting, you simply re-adopt this ordinance on the Affordable Housing Fund without a sunset provision.
All right. Any questions for Mike? All right, do I hear a motion on this?
Motion to approve item 9C.
Second. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item D. Rich Bourbonnais, come on up. Good evening,
Road
Rich.
salt. So, this is our yearly process of purchasing road salt. We'd like to jump onto the state bid, and that's effectively what this is saying. We're going with solar salt, which is, it's a different process for creating the salt. It's actually dried and from water, and water is put into the pits, and it's extracted, and the water is dried. It's got a very high purity. That way we can utilize our new brining system a little more effectively. So the rock salt, we're going to try not to do it all, and we're just going to go with the solar salt.
All right. Any questions for Rich?
Rich you showed us the new brining solution at the wastewater, that was actually at the public, right, the public works building, right? And so you showed us the new trucks, how they all have this brine system that you're going to spray onto the roads.
That's right.
And to make it better, I guess,
Yeah, and what it allows us to do is to pre-treat the roads rather than, throw it onto the roads when it starts to get lousy out. We can even do it during regular work hours rather than, have these guys go out and, in the middle of the night. And the salt will stick to the road a little bit better. It won't roll off the road like the granular stuff does, and, you know, we've been using it now for a few years, and it seems to be pretty effective. Narragansett has been doing it a little bit longer, but we're going to try to get right into that mix and, you know, do it for everything.
Good.
It also eliminates or reduces the need for sanding.
It will reduce the amount of sand that we'll need, yeah. That's the goal.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 9D.
Second?
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
All right, it's going to move us to item E, a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice of public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 9, Licenses and Miscellaneous Business Regulations that would add a new Article 9, Rental Dwellings, as shown in Exhibit 5 attached here too. Mike?
So this is also coming up on the manager's report, and he'll give you a little bit more of the background and the reason why. But something that we've been, the council has been discussing, we've been talking about the need for in town is a rental registration ordinance so that we know what homes in town are being rented, on what basis, for how long, how many units within the homes, et cetera. The idea of a rental registration ordinance is to get your arms around what the circumstances are out there currently, so that we are aware of what units, how many are being used for rental purposes. And there are many other towns that have something very similar in terms of rental registration. These are ordinances that have been upheld, so we know that in terms of their legal standing, they're in good legal standing. This is not an ordinance which would regulate, you know, how many parking spaces, how many people, how many weeks, how many months, etc. This is purely straightforward. The building official would be the repository of all this information about these rental registration units. So I gave you in your packets what that would look like. We need an order of notice for a public hearing where obviously this would all be fleshed out and discussed.
Mike, oh, sorry. How does this differ from the state registry?
Yeah, so the state registry does provide for anyone who rents out their units for 30 days, you know, so that, and the state does keep track of all of that. I think a local ordinance would delve a little bit deeper. You know, some people are renting for shorter periods of time, some people are renting for longer periods of time. And also, I think it's important, it'll be a lot easier, and I think it will be a lot more accurate for this to be done at the local level. And that has proven to be true in other communities throughout the state that have their own local registry ordinance.
So currently now, there is a rental just for 30, you know, for long-term rentals with the state, okay. So this is more geared towards short-term rentals like Airbnb, Vrbo,
Right,
and,
but it would apply across the board. It would
Right.
it would
Not
still apply
specifically.
across the board.
right, okay.
I'd like to, I know we will discuss this in the future when we have the public hearing, but I guess I'm concerned that what would happen is people will take their rentals offline. They won't post them on these public sites. They won't register. And then the consumer, it's buyer beware. You have no recourse because they're all underground, right? And so if you rent and something goes wrong, the landlord's, we're doing a disservice to whoever's the renter because the landlord is operating on the side. So the more we regulate, the more potential to actually do harm to the people who might be renting. It's probably an unintended consequence to what sounds like a good path. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if we reduce the fees, it could be voluntary registration, then we could have a better idea how to identify the status of the homes, as opposed to a high fee for enforcement against it. Could be more of a lower fee, voluntary compliance.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Are they? Did you outline the fee proposal, Mike?
It's $100. It would be a registration fee of $100, and a late fee, it would be $300 for a late fee.
And what do they pay to the state? Do you know?
Jim's saying he thinks it's 50. I'm not sure off
50?
the top of my head. And again, that's all stuff we could,
Iron out in the public hearing? Okay.
and I'll find out for sure for you what the state fee is.
All right. Any thoughts on this?
I think that I just want to explain that understanding the composition of our town is very important to us addressing the housing crisis that we have here in South Kingstown and that exists throughout the country. But we need to know what our town, how our town is comprised, so that we can make the appropriate decisions going forward.
Thank you, Patty. All right.
So at a public hearing, the only way that a renter, a landlord would know was they'd have to read about it in the paper, right? Or read the ad? Because we don't reach out and,
No, we don't, especially something that applies throughout the town.
Right.
Town-wide.
okay.
It's the only way they're going to know.
And have we ever, has any board or commissioner, anybody gathered input from landlords about what would be helpful and not helpful if we went down this road?
The Economic Development Committee, I'm not sure.
Right.
Probably the Economic Development Committee let them know. When would this be scheduled?
Yeah, that's my next question.
So November
27th.
Wait, it's the end of November, so we have plenty of time between tonight and November 27th to get the word out there. Maybe ask them to place it on their next agenda so that everyone is aware.
Can we have the staff liaison, if it's possible, meet with the EDC, add this to the agenda for their meeting so that they can use their networks?
Yeah.
Makes sense. I don't know, who, is it Luke? Is it you, Luke? Brian Wagner. Jamie, can you pass that on to Brian if they're going to meet?
Yeah, we'll ensure that's done. I'll bring up a lot more about this once I go to the manager's report on what the proposal is.
Thank you.
I dealt with a rental registration for almost 3 years.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this? Item E?
Motion to approve 9E.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to the manager's report. Jim?
Thank you, Council President. There are 5 items on there. I think it'll be appropriate to bring E, the update on short-term rentals, right to the top, so we can just continue this conversation. I was a town manager in Narragansett just under 3 years. They had a rental registration in place there. I think it worked almost flawlessly. They'd had it for a while, and it really did help the town, and it really did help show what the fabric of the town is, and I think most important, it helped the building inspector really keep that town safe with the way it was handled. And that's the goal here, is safety and so forth. But let me just go over some of the talking points here. This is a major issue across the United States. Not just South Kingston, not just the state of Rhode Island, but everywhere. The impact of short-term rentals, and we use the term short-term rentals very loosely. What is a short-term rental? That would have to be defined by policy by the council, right? I'm just going to say rentals, because in many cities and towns, if you even rent your house for 1 week a year, it's on a registry. We do not know, this town does not know how many rentals we have in this town at this time. We do not know how many residential homes have been turned into businesses that are rented out. So what is happening? We can see a major, I've lived in this town 25 years. I have seen a major change in this town as far as residential homes being sold, use of businesses, profit, and so forth. And I'm not against that. I'm just saying it's a reality. It has affected the affordability of homes in this town. But the real purpose is to get a handle on how many places in this town are being used as rentals. So this way we can see what the impact is on the town in many different areas. It would be for public safety, emergency services, college student rentals. What I found as an observation in Narragansett was that, well, number one, the goal is compliance. Of course, there are going to be people that try and skirt the system. That's in everything. But compliance is very high in that town. There were over 2,500 properties that were listed on the rental registration there, which was pretty close to what they depicted. So in this town, we would try and get a handle on how many are being rented. How could we enforce that? There are air DNA analysis you would hire, and a service could be kept where anyone that advertises on any of these media sites, you can tell, you'd be able to get a list of approximately how many are in this town. And that would be, then we would reconcile that with a registration to determine if there was a landlord that was in violation of the rental registration law ordinance. So there were several unscrupulous landlords in towns that try and skirt what this is. They'll put 6 bedrooms, they'll put, multiple bathrooms, they'll stack that place up so it looks like a dorm instead of a house. So this is one of the things we're trying to avoid. They put some of these rentals in basements with no egress. So these are the type of things for public safety, trying to avoid a fire, a catastrophic flood, anything that could endanger someone living in one of these areas in a house. So, but the first step is this. This is all policy driven by the town council. It's not me coming up with this and just enacting it. It's all policy decision, and let's not pretend that landlords aren't going to be upset and show up at the meetings. But it must be done for this town so that we can keep up with what is going on through the town, through the state, and across the United States. The League of Cities and Towns has brought this up as one of the top areas that they're looking at, with many of the town managers and mayors saying, we need this, and let's try and come up with one type of policy. But we need it now. We can't wait a year. So, this is the first step, for the town council to approve a rental registration. And we could start through the building inspector's office to start gathering all the information and coming up with the most accurate registration list we have. This would give our building inspector, through the municipal court, the housing court, some teeth to enforce the ordinances which we desperately need. Some have come before the council in the past few months, just a handful, but it could get much worse over the next few years. Well, the building inspector is now going to the Superior Court, and it's languishing there, months and years before the building inspector can have some enforcement action on these properties. So this will be a good thing for the town. I truly believe that. I don't think it will escape controversy. There are going to be people in here that are not going to want this, but I do think this would be very important for the town council to look at and study. I asked our solicitor, Ursillo, and his team, who have extensive knowledge from other cities and towns, with what type of registration could work, and he has a draft for us to look at on November 27th when we have this public hearing and before, that you can study and see if this works for the policy that the council wants to enact. So it's not an easy thing to do, but I do think that it's something this town desperately needs. You have any questions on that before we move on? Okay. Let's go back to A, on the town manager's report, the update on the school building committee and school facilities project. So, the school building committee met on October 19th, last Thursday, and the next meeting is scheduled for November 2nd to continue the conversation of what needs to be done with the school facilities. One thing they determined at this meeting on the 19th was that the cost estimation has gone up to approximately $155 million for the school project. But the decision there was that the school building committee would recommend that 150 is the max that they would advocate for, and that the other money would either be the savings would have to be from cuts, downsizing, or whatever from the current plan. The original conceptual design was 150,000 square feet. It's down to 143,000 square feet. This conversation is going to continue tomorrow night. So anyone watching or anyone has any questions, it's going to be a joint meeting in this chamber tomorrow at 6 p.m. with the town council, the school committee, and the school building committee to hash out and answer any questions you might have with the school facilities project. We have asked specific questions to the school committee and the superintendent of schools, and I'm very hopeful they will come with the answers on the fiscal impact. Also, our finance director is there for the fiscal impact that this bond was at 125, could be at 150, or whatever. So we will have all the numbers we need for the council to make a well-informed decision tomorrow night.
We're not deciding tomorrow night, we're having a work session. so
No, we're having a work session.
I think the public thinks that some decision is going to be made on Tuesday. It's not, we're getting emails about,
Well, if I misspoke, then what I mean is you will have all the information to make a well-informed decision when that time comes.
okay.
B, the boards and commissions. A request was made by the council to actively engage the boards and commissions, which are about 18 or 19, depending on how you count them. And I would agree that a lot of the stuff that happens, you have some very good people volunteering their time, coming in, trying to make a difference in this town. And it kind of seemed that the boards and commissions would work hard, come up with recommendations, and by the time it made to the council, it was a big delay. So the decision was made by the council to bring the boards and commissions in on a regular basis and explain what they're doing, what they're working on. And we've had a handful so far, and I think it is very helpful to the council and to the residents to see what their boards and commissions are doing. And but it's not easy to coordinate nearly 20 boards and commissions to come in and when they can come in. So I directed the Deputy Town Manager, Luke Murray, to meet with the boards and commissions, with the chair, co-chairs, and liaisons, and explain the parameters. We don't want them coming in here without a plan. Come in here, get to the point, what they're working on, what the future is, and move on. And then the council could ask questions. So that was one of the main goals of that meeting, to coordinate all this with the boards and commissions, the chairs, co-chairs, and so forth, to give them a plan. You'll have a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever is decided on the time. The planning just came in with an hour and a half, because that's a major one, right, planning and zoning. So, and this way, your expectations will be known to them, what you're looking for, what the future is with these boards and commissions. And I think overwhelmingly, I did not attend that meeting, but I think overwhelmingly, I got some very positive feedback that they appreciated coming in and a plan moving forward. So in the very near future, we should have a schedule of what the boards and commissions will meet with the council, whether it's once a month or twice a month, depending on what other things are on the agenda for you to address. Next item is the update on the American Rescue Plan Act program, which we delayed the presentation from 2 weeks ago to tonight so that we could include what the most up-to-date questions you had moving forward. So Jamie Rabbit has been working on that, and that's a heavy lift, working on opera money. It's constantly trying to stay on top of where the money is, where it's going, and make sure it's not being overspent. Some of the consultants we hired, the planning director was not certain we were getting our value, and he was right on it, and he talked to them, and I think we're getting a pretty good product. But I'll turn that over to him now for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated with regards to the heavy lift. So we were back before you on the 23rd in January with an update. So I'm working off of that basic same spreadsheet that the council members have, and I do have blow-ups of that for everybody. But just to circle back where we were, that the council originally approved kind of project scope just over $9 million. Two of the major components of that were downtown revitalization, both on the public side and private side, which equated to just over about $5.5 million. Associated with that were internal infrastructure improvements on the municipal side, opera programming, EMS building, government services for just over $1 million, as well as nonprofit and housing. Two things you'll notice in the bottom left, and have an opportunity, the pie chart gets really crazy when I start to subdivide the subdivisions that are there. Originally, you had earmarked $425,000 for nonprofit and social services. And that's actually this next slide, sorry. Of that $425,000, you have allocated through a competitive bid process $363,000, and we're in the process of distributing all of that money. On the housing side, associated with that same type of social services, you originally had $375,000. You, again, through a competitive bid process and awarding those grants, awarded $300,000, $200 to one entity and $100 to another. This is, in essence, the spreadsheet, but I won't ask you to squint and read that, so there's a little bit of a blow up. Again, given the scale and size, this is kind of the best we can do. Again, the first category was the village downtown public investment. You had allocated just over $3.49 million. Those are awaiting the final conceptual completeness of the 5 village studies prepared by Wesson and Sampson. We anticipate that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and there will be recommendations on how to do the spend plan and some basic cost estimates associated with that. And hopefully they align well with the categories we have already come up with. The second is also with regards to the downtown village. That's the private-public partnerships. Some of those things we anticipating having an early winter rollout, primarily facade improvements, fencing, landscaping, and the private-public partnership. I will probably be back with you in maybe 2 or 3 council meetings later to discuss what you feel is an appropriate grant award. Is it 20-80, 40-60, 50-50, so that the businesses have a substantial amount of skin in the game, and it's not just a pure handout, that they're also making an investment in their business as well as the municipality making an investment. A lot of federal programs are 80-20, but again, depending on what the subscription is to the grant program, you may have some flexibility on those percentages. The next category, again, is the social services. As I mentioned earlier, you originally had let me back up for a moment. On the social services side, I flipped one additional page. On the social services side, you had $425,000 originally programmed for social services, and then competitive bid process, you allocated $363,000. So there's $61,000 left in that line item. Under the next item for housing, you had originally $375,000 programmed. You allocated $300 in a distribution, so you have $75,000 remaining in social services. So you have $136,000 unallocated outside of those 2 categories. So I know the council has been talking about housing and potentially looking at existing town properties. From my perspective, you have $75,000 that you could reallocate to a consultant to look at some of those properties. I've discussed that with a few of our architectural consultants. We actually have one on board on 2 projects that they are undertaking right now in the town, and they're probably in the $5,000 to $15,000 range to come up with some very quick rudimentary kind of density renderings for those properties. The next category that we had, or the third category we had, are the municipal investments. Under the municipal investments, you originally allocated just over $1 million. And to date, we have allocated 90,000 of that, and that was for the natural resource officer. There's an additional 90,000 going in the coming fiscal year for that position, so the entire 180 has been allocated. Office 365 has been purchased and is up and running. You have audiovisual upgrades of $89,781. That is coming in the next few weeks. I will note there's a small asterisk on that. I believe IT through council to the town manager has asked about lapel microphones. That is not in the $89,000 program, so that could push the program above the 90,000 for those additional microphones.
So Jamie, those microphones will replace these microphones?
Yeah, so you're getting all new audiovisual. These mics, which are hardwired, all your mics are going to be wireless. So the difference is they're similar to what you have.
What about the on-off button?
Same, I believe the same thing.
I believe they're hot.
Oh, okay.
The wireless
I may stand.
Yep.
They're hot all the time.
I know the lapels will be hot all the time.
Do we have to have, I don't think we need that. I don't feel like
I'd rather
we need
not have that. If it's going to cost extra for that, my preference is,
Oh, the lapel?
Yeah. Who's recommending that? We're not recommending that.
It wasn't,
I'm aware of a request that came in. That's not.
I had sent an email to Jim asking about it after I got a complaint from somebody watching on TV who couldn't hear the comments being made. And I wasn't pushing it. I was just wondering, would that help?
Yeah, so it's going to be an option. So if an individual council member wishes to wear a lapel pin, a lapel mic, for whatever reason, then we're getting an option for them to have that. So I would agree with you. I don't think a hot mic all the time is the best solution to this, but the lapel pins would be.
It's my understanding that the lapel mics are hot all the time, but your wireless mics will be like these
do have
with
an
an
on and
on-off button.
My experience with wireless mics is the batteries die. So,
There are extra batteries and extra mics in the program.
no. Not a fan of that. 'Cause you ever go to a presentation and the mic goes, and then they're struggling to scramble for the microphone? This is a thing I feel like works, and if somebody needs to learn how to speak into it, then it's a different story.
The next line items were youth employment program and the Discovery Camp mental health program. Those have not been initiated, $55,000 and $30,000. In the public improvements, there is a line item earmarked for Old Mountain Fields. I believe there are some discussions with Parks and Leisure and Terry Murphy about potentially reallocating those funds to Old Mountain Field.
To the improvements?
Improvements at Old Mountain Field. And the improvements at Old Mountain Field are under preliminary design. Beta Group, Randy Collins, representing them. We just had a meeting, or it was Terry's meeting, but we had a meeting roughly 2 weeks ago to go over preliminary design. And again, everybody was relatively impressed with what they have come up to so far. The paramedicine associated with staffing, that is an ongoing program, as well as the police department and their anticipated officers. So I don't have that as available funding unallocated unless those programs change or a council heads in a different direction. Other projects that were revised after July 2021, we have the EMS building at $1.1 million. We have 2 contracts already out on that. That's one with Union Studios for architectural services for just over $127,000. And we have one with Dordell for engineering and permitting for just over $12,000, and that included a 10% contingency. So we have $972,000 left in the build program. I think, given construction costs, we are all aware that that amount may be low, and we are working on other funding sources. Mr. Manny has applied through Senator Reed's office for a $2 million earmark, and that is December-ish, Jim?
They don't have a
Potentially.
speaker. That's not happening. That's not happening.
Again, it would be wonderful if we received something like that, but it is not something we can necessarily count on. Program management, we originally had $475,000 allocated out of a $500,000 fund. We have only moved forward with what is called Phase 3 within their scope of services. The total amount of that scope is $220,000. So we have $255,000 remaining in that account balance. And then we had a contingency for Weston and Sampson just under $25,000, and we had non-dedicated program funds of $120,000. And someone may say, how did we not have $120,000 dedicated? When we originally received our grant award from Opera, it was in the $8.9 million range. When we started to receive the checks and get the final amount, it was 9.1. So that's where the 120,000 plus or minus comes out. So if you look in the bottom right-hand column of what the difference is between approved and committed, you have just over about $500,000 that was programmed, not necessarily utilized, and potentially is available.
So,
Thank you.
Jamie, I got a quick question for you.
So-
You ever throw this one out there?
I would just like to request, we can have a discussion because I think we should, but I'd like to add this ARPA funds and reallocation of some of these funds to the next meeting agenda so that we come to the meeting. Looks like there is money that we could shift around. Patty's nodding, so I think it's good, and allocate it to some of the purposes that we need. I mean, I feel like,
I was thinking we do it now.
I don't think you can.
Why not?
Can,
Well, said we can act on items that are in the manager's report.
we can reallocate funds tonight. I don't think,
Now, you need to be prepared to do that, right? So
not,
you don't do it in a vacuum, obviously.
I'd rather be a little bit more transparent and let the community know that we're going to have this conversation. People might have something to say. Other groups, might have something to contribute. So I don't want to make a decision at 9:30 on a Monday when again, it's a line item on the town manager's report. Going back to the conversation we had an hour ago. People don't know what's happening. We need to be better and do better by the community. So if we could add it to the agenda and then spend 2 weeks preparing, it'd be what I would want.
I do have a question, just about one line item for Chief Moynihan. The public safety and mental health staffing for 400 and some odd thousand. When I toured the public safety complex, we discussed the opioid funds as a potential source of funding for some extra staff, and I'm just wondering if that is this, or could we make that this, or?
So for our mental health or behavioral health needs, we did just recently secured a federal grant that's going to allow for the addition of one full-time clinician. And then the money appropriated here would really be supporting it. There is opiate settlement money, but that's really dedicated to deal with the opioid problem. It has to be specific for opioid abatement. We do have a plan in place of some modifications in the building and building out resources for really all of our behavioral health needs, whether it be mental health or substance abuse.
One of the things that we talked about, which seems really exciting, is the fact that we are going to have the availability of this service, and the public safety complex is going to be more welcoming. So so then that clinician that you'll be hiring is funded through the opioids, but these two new officers are in addition to that, so it'll be a total of 3?
So no, the two officers were appropriated for our community service, so they're in place, they have been in place. We've had one, when it first was discussed, was immediately transferred in. Just because of difficulties of staffing up, we weren't able to take other officers out of our patrol function and put them in that. So we just recently, from the graduation of the three most recent officers, we've transferred another officer into our community resource division. So we have two officers that are dedicated to that. One handles Leo and also deals with school resource needs that are there. And the most recent one, what we did is we're expanding it where now we have more of a presence in our elementary schools where we didn't have a school resource officer.
Was that the woman down in the?
Lieutenant Dolock runs, she
Yeah.
supervises our community resource unit, yes.
Right, okay. All right. I understand how it all
Okay.
fits. Okay, thanks.
So when we talk about this, Craig Stanley isn't here to talk about the paramedicine program, and we've talked about that for a number of years. I would like to know where that is and then how that really fits in. I think it fits in with the library renovation project, so I think we do need to have a better understanding. Perhaps all of that money that's allocated to that, he doesn't need. I don't know. I look at that, and I do recall the police piece, that it was in the budget 2 budgets ago, or I don't know, Jim, I recall you saying you took the police out because you thought of a different way that we could fund those positions. Am I remembering it correctly?
When I first came here, we looked at a COPS grant, where they might be able to get additional police staffing paid for, like, I think it's 3 years or 2 years, at a subsidized rate. And Chief Moynihan has been looking at that and trying to get that. But as you know, the needs of the town are really amping up. So we, Chief, did we postpone one and add one at that point?
No, so the COPS grant, that would have been awarded by October 1st. We haven't heard back.
Okay.
I would assume that we weren't awarded that. At the same time, we applied for the mental health clinician. We were awarded that. And so both of those grant programs were effective October 1st. So I think if we were to be awarded that, we would have heard by now.
So do you anticipate needing the $407,000 and putting two officers on? Is that what you're telling me?
We do. We actually have 2 that are in place right now. So the only stipulation there was that originally it was 2, and the idea was to staff up properly. But because of shortages at the police department and us not being able to hire and put someone into that position, we were only able to allocate one officer to that. Now we're at a stage where when the most recent class that graduated, when they graduated from our FTO program and now they're out in a patrol function, we're able to move a second officer into that position.
Okay.
So right now, it's currently being staffed, those 2 positions from that funding.
Okay. So thank you for sharing this, and I guess we'll meet in 2 weeks, and it'll be on the agenda, and we'll talk about we'll gather more information, figure out where we can make some adjustments.
Yeah.
I had been asking, quite honestly, for a long time, because I feel like we created too many projects, and it drained on staff resources and efficiency, and also it's not really targeting some of the solutions we care about. Patty's nodding.
I do have some specific questions for you, Jamie, on some of the items.
Can I just say one thing before that, Roy?
Go ahead.
In moving between 2 Excel programs and 2 different laptops, I have a glitch out of $9.1 million. I have a $68,000 error. I am tracking that down. I spent about 3 hours today trying to look at all my formulas and track that down, and I'm close.
Don't worry, all the more reason that we don't want to rush and give him some time so that we can then have the right information. Thank you for being honest and saying that. Thank you.
So, Jamie, let me get this straight. You don't want to answer these questions that I have for you specific to the line items on this spreadsheet?
Yeah, I'm prepared.
You are, all right. So I will ask them. And I think it's helpful to understand these a little more. So the area under other projects revised after July 1, program management. So the reduction there, we had initially 475, looks like now it's 220, so that frees up some monies there. That's related to the reduction in services, which reduced the amount we paid toward Weston and Sampson? Am I
Correct. So we originally allocated $500,000 for program management. Our contract with Weston and Sampson was $475,000 with a roughly $25,000 contingency. We have only released them to fulfill scope item C, which is about $220,000. So 220 from 500 is the remaining funds available under that line item.
Okay.
We do not anticipate spending any more potentially with Weston and Sampson than the 220.
And this non-dedicated program funds of 120,000, that was just sort of an amount?
That was the difference between 9 million and change and 8.9.
Okay.
And that happened after we did the original spreadsheet and the town council had already done all the allocations. So we just put it in as a contingency.
And my understanding on the EMS building is it's likely going to run beyond budget?
Union Studios is in the process of starting some of their construction elements and bidding. We are having conversations with them about how much of the building can be prefabricated. Under the Davis-Bacon Act, you have to pay prevailing wages on any municipal and federal funds. So if you are building a wall in the field, it's prevailing wages. If you build the wall in a factory, it's a supply, where Davis-Bacon Act does not apply to the construction of a wall in a factory. So we are trying to be as cost-effective as possible, but we are deficient in that line item.
We knew early on that would not be enough to build a state-of-the-art modern facility. We knew we'd have to put capital in it. That's why we applied for a substantial amount of money through Senator Reed's office, and he approved it for an earmark. And once again, we all know what's going on in Washington right now, so we're waiting to see how that turns out. But if that number does turn out, because it's a rural area, we've demonstrated it's a rural area that can also assist other municipalities, and we are successful in getting a substantial amount of funds for that EMS facility, that'll free up money on the back end here.
Yeah. Again, the building's a little over 3,000 square feet. If you put a square footage cost on just the construction of 400, you're at 1.2. If it goes up to $500 a square foot, you're at 1.5 million.
So not that we're discussing reallocation now, but you don't think there would be a need when we do discuss that to recommend reallocating some of that toward the EMS building?
Yes, there will be again, there will be a need to reallocate to EMS.
Okay.
I'll work with Union Studios to try and refine that number for your future discussion.
Well, possibly a need.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Right, but regardless of whether or not we move it over to EMS, we have other priorities, and I think we talked about it to the last meeting about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has $100,000 and the Open Space Fund has $1 million, and we talked about trying to adjust that and fix things and send things that way so that we could advance some of the projects. So we do need to tweak this.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you.
I agree.
Did a lot of hard work. I think this was really important because I think now the rest of the council sees an opportunity that we can reallocate, and I think it was well worth your time, so I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Jamie.
You only had one question, Rory?
I got more. I'm just kidding. I'm all
2
set.
weeks. See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks, we'll have more for you.
Well, whatever,
Okay.
14.
All right, thank you, Jamie. All right, Jim, we have one more item here.
I think that's it.
Oliver
yes,
Watson.
I'm sorry. That's why you have glasses. Report on the status of the Oliver Watson Home, Wakefield School, and South Road School. The deputy town manager's done a lot of work in the past couple of weeks to get you status reports. He's met with members of RIDE. He's met with, he's got it clarified, whether the Wakefield School was turned over to the state. The state law about housing was in effect. So Luke Murray will go over what's been going on the past couple of weeks.
Good evening. So I thought it was important. I did share out quite a bit of information on Friday to the council, but I thought it was important, if you're going to have this conversation, to have as much immediate information as possible and some of the background, because it's extensive. I'll start with the Watson House. And I did send out the memo that contains all the information. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through it. But the important thing to remember is that this is not a new project. The facility closed in 1997. There was an effort in early 2000 to rezone it, and the town council at some point had balked on that effort because the neighbors did not want it rezoned to R20, and affordable housing was talked about at that time. As you know, in 2007, there was a crash. I think because of that and other circumstances, it dragged a bit. As you can imagine with councils, as things go on, things lag. Terry Murphy picked up the ball in around 2018 and did try to get an appraisal done of the property, which is in this memo, what those amounts were, as well as the cover sheet on the appraisals. And they did try to put it to market. They didn't get suitable bids at that time. And so, again, with COVID, we hit another snag, and the property is lagged. So it sits today in its current state, approximately 2.7 acres. It is approximately 2,800 square foot interior space with 5 bedrooms. It was used for a home for the aged. There are restrictions, what I put in here. I also attached the deed and some of the background on the decision, the judicial decision on allowing disposal of the property. So hopefully that informed the discussion moving forward. At this point, we don't really have any true recommendations on the property. It is open for discussion, and I look forward to hearing some direction on that from the council. Any questions on Watson at this time? Councilman Meyer?
When we had the tour a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned that there were some discussions that Terry had recently.
Yes, so I've been informed that the Warm Welcome House has taken a tour of the facility. They requested one. We allowed them to go in and take a look. They subsequently went and did a tour with an architect to look at what possibilities there would be for conversion, possibly going back to a home for the aged, in conformance with the restrictions. We have not heard back on that. My guidance was if they want to come with a proposal, obviously approach the town manager, we can convey that on the council and have that discussion. So,
and Russ is here. Russ.
Oh, yes. So certainly can address you.
Yeah.
Very
Russ, you want to come up?
Hi, Russ Partridge, Executive Director of the Warm Center and Warm Welcome House here in Peacedale. If I can, just a really quick description of how this all came about. Through the governor's press to increase shelter space and affordable housing, we began to look at additional properties, and actually the Watson House came to us through a board member who said, have you looked at the Watson House? And then realizing through this little bit of investigation that it was really restricted to seniors, or the property use of the property was restricted to seniors, the way that we saw it. We've actually have begun a senior program, interim housing for seniors at Warm, and it really kind of fit to what we're seeing demographically. Seniors are the biggest population now coming into homeless systems. And so kind of looking at this really did fit. We got into the property on 2 occasions, the most recent being with our architect, who wants to go back into the property and look at what code enforcement at this point, where it stands with a code review. I'm talking with my board about doing that. They estimated to be about $5,000, and we have had some preliminary discussions with Brian about there may be some funds available that we can apply for the town. Very interested in the property to be used as interim senior housing. I think it fits. It certainly fits the population that we're seeing more and more of. in coming through the shelter system and coming into our offices on a daily basis. And so it is something that certainly I'd love to partner with the town to do something along these lines.
How long do you think it'll be before you've had the code review by the architect?
I have a meeting with my advisory committee and a board meeting on Wednesday, which I think I can get this approved and then move forward. So I would think within the month, I can talk to, again, with the, with our architect and see if we can get in.
Thank you.
So, is it okay?
Yeah.
So I wanted to put this on the agenda. I'm sort of confused a little bit, and it has nothing to do with Russ Partridge and the Warm Center, because I feel like we didn't have a conversation, but yet we're already going down a path. So I don't know how that happened, because I think we need to talk about the whole parcel. It's 2.7 acres. The South Road parcel is 6 acres. So we want to leverage and get the most that we can from the site. So no disrespect to Russ, because you know how I feel about seniors who are homeless. I could have a crying moment, so we can't talk about that. So I do believe what he's saying is accurate about the needs, but we need to look at the best use of the property. We don't want to give anyone an inside edge. This sort of seems interesting to me that this is farther down the road than I even anticipated. This is the first I'm hearing of it, and I don't know if you've had individual or other conversations. So I just want to be responsible to the community and have everybody be aware that anyone could submit a proposal. Not that this is a bad proposal, but that's just the house. There's still acreage around it, and we don't have a plan for that. And if there's an opportunity to do more, I would want to do more. So I don't want to make Russ's board and Russ do things, and then we're going to shift gears because we haven't asked anybody else about this.
If I could, just for a point of clarification, this really came up as conversation. It's really how it came, with a board member who lives next to the property, who said, have you looked at this property? And she knew that the deed restrictions, because in the board meetings, we're talking about senior services and so forth. So it really kind of rolled just as conversation, and really has been no more than conversation. Maybe just, and I'll rephrase that, maybe just a tad more, and having the architect go in. Because definitely, I think that knowing, and some of the history with the property and other potential developers, you know, town services are about 1.5 miles away from the property itself, if my understanding is correct. And so the cost effectiveness of further development, and that gets quite expensive. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why people have pulled back. Our intent would be, at this particular point in time, to simply use the property as it is.
Right. So thank you. But and I appreciate you very, very much. So I'm just curious, how long has this been going on? Because I hear him, Mr. Partridge, say that it was a conversation, but the town staff is facilitating something, and the town council is not aware that this is happening. So we didn't direct anybody to pursue this. I saw Patty's email was this weekend, and mine was, or whatever, in the last 10 days. So I'm just sort of confused how we got so far down one road where we didn't even explore all options. And I do think as a community, we should do the highest and best use, or at least discuss what it is before we go one way, through one door.
Well, I want to make a point of clarification. This isn't anything we pursued as a town administration or the town manager. I was informed that the Warm Welcome House, as a community partner, wanted to take a look at the house. We allowed it, but we were very clear on it's a council decision, and that no determinations have been made on the property. And myself, nor the town manager, that I'm aware, have heard any proposals on this property, anything specific.
Yep.
They took a walk through, and when being good community partners as administration, we allowed it, but that was the extent. There was no other coordination that occurred.
This would have been something that I would have appreciated on the town manager's report, just as an example, so that I'm not hearing about it, that these things already happened. I don't know that would just be me. My whole point of the email was for us to have a conversation and the community. And I keep saying the same thing because it's presented through a side angle of the town manager's report and not a council discussion. And so we don't have input, we're just hearing something.
To bring things back a bit, I have some questions about the Oliver Watson house. So I understand there's a deed restriction on the physical building, but not the land surrounding it. Is that correct? Or can you clarify
No, I
that
don't
for
believe
me?
it reads that way, and I'll let the solicitor address that, but it's the property.
Brown, it would be the zoning that's the issue.
What's that?
The zoning.
You know, the way the property is zoned.
Well, no, there is an actual deed restriction.
No, I
Oh.
know there's an actual deed restriction. I'm just saying, I'm going back to when you're talking about perhaps there are other things we could do with that property. Could we put up more buildings? Could we expand the, et cetera? That,
Can you,
there's a lot more to it.
can you break this down for me, Mike? There's a deed restriction. What does that entail? What is the deed restriction on the property?
No, I have not read it recently the way Luke has, but it basically, my memory is that it restricted it to use for senior services.
Right, specific words, home for the aged, right, in the will of Mary Watson. And there was also a trust established at that time under Oliver Watson. The home was supposed to be named Oliver Watson House. So it was used for that purpose from 1939 until 1997. The town ran it as a home for senior services. At that time, it was abandoned for that use. So in around 2000, the then town manager, Steve Alfred, had worked to get a judicial ruling with the solicitor that outlaid that we could dispose of the property, but any funds from that disposal of property had to be deposited in the Watson Trust, the Oliver Watson Trust, which exists today. And it was supposed to be intended for the purpose of senior supports, broadly, right? And Terry Murphy, who's here, can also expand on that. That stands. And there's also something in the memo I point to that when the bids had come in lower than value in the 2018-2019 process, there is a conflict between the town has a fiduciary responsibility to get the highest and best value of the property, which was the judicial ruling. So we couldn't sell it under appraisal. So at that time, we had, I think the highest bid was $200,000. It was valued at a minimum of $275,000, if you can imagine, in today's market. So the house didn't move. So to the point, if you choose to just sell the property, that money doesn't go to the town. It goes to the trust. If you choose to use the house in accordance with the will, you could. If you want to subdivide the property, then there's an additional, I think, discussion that needs to happen about what's the town responsibility to pay the trust for the remuneration they would have lost, because essentially you're not using that building. Let's say you knock it down, you create 4 lots. You've essentially diminished the value of the property, but there's value in the will. So if I'm unmistaken on this, the town would have to pay into the trust to make that trust whole for that amount. So the point being, it gets complicated quick. I think what we're looking for is division in that discussion, and then we can back in to the logistics.
So I'd like to bring this back to the council table for a minute. Could we get a copy? Do we have a copy in our email of the deed and the legal information? I appreciate you're saying something, but I'd like to hear from the lawyer that we pay what the restrictions are, if any.
If it'd be helpful, why don't I just prepare a memo for you, just outlining it, and that way you have an opportunity to figure out, well, what are my options going to be going forward, given what the restrictions are.
Luke, how much is in the Oliver Watson Trust?
So I'll need to check on that again for you. I don't have that information readily available. I can't remember. I may have, again, last week was hectic, but I may have even put it in the memo that I sent on Friday, which did have the attached deed and the judicial.
You gave us so much information last week. Thank you.
It's a lot to digest.
A lot,
we didn't expect you to digest it all over the weekend.
I guess the one, after having toured the home, in thinking about it as a shelter space, one of and actually one of the challenges of the space in general is that there's no bus transportation and there's really no transportation at all in that area. So I think that's certainly something that we'll have to consider, and something that's very important with, you know, with people that have a lot of needs. So.
If there's no further questions on that, certainly can discuss at your will, but I can review Wakefield and South Road, just updates on those really quick, and then turn it over to you.
ahead.
Okay. So Wakefield, I just wanted to let the council know that I've been tracking on trying to get the school department to respond to where that building was in sort of a turnover process. There was some confusion in, obviously, the administration change, and I wasn't getting a straight answer. No fault to Brian Mahoney and his crew there, but I think there was some obvious disruption of what has occurred. I did get an answer on Friday, so the necessary paperwork was filed in March, which is required. It's 6 months notification to ride in order to turn over a building. That was done in March, so the building could be turned over today. Obviously, there's additional process, and Mike can fill you in on that. But essentially, it's in the school department's court as far as how they want to handle this. They can come to the town council and petition to essentially have us take back the property. And if we do that, we'd have to budget for that, obviously. So, Mike, do you have anything on that?
No, the important thing is that the process has begun with the notice.
Right. So that's run its course, and we're just waiting on the school department. I think they have a lot on their plate at the current moment. So I expect that, you know, depending on your will or visions of the property, we can certainly move that process along.
Luke, when you say we'd have to budget for that, is that like the ongoing maintenance cost?
Yes.
Maintain a
Yeah,
building?
I mean, just like South Road, we spend money to heat it, and you maintain it to a minimum level. So obviously, if roof repairs need to be done, we have to do that, and pending any use of the property. So yes, in the upcoming budget, we'll certainly look at that. It's usually minimal, but you know, right now, South Road, I think we're spending $20,000 to $30,000 on budget for that a year. All right, South Road, I just wanted to inform the council that I did take a walkthrough of South Road School this past Thursday, October 19th, with a vendor from the state housing. If you remember, and I did put this in my correspondence, there's a Rhode Island General Law 455310, which was specifically for assessing former school buildings. This was so the state could get a handle on these vacant properties and determine if they would be suitable for affordable housing. This particular vendor was an appraiser. He reached out, the state reached out a couple weeks ago, requesting a list of any vacant school properties, which under legislation we have to provide because we're under the 10%. We provided that list, primary property being South Road. They subsequently reached out to myself requesting a walkthrough, which we're, you know, obliged to do. So I did a brief walkthrough. He didn't have a lot of questions. I asked him what the next steps were. He informed me that he was going back to the task force, which again is in the legislation. They have to regroup and determine if the facility would be suitable for some type of affordable housing and if they wanted to move forward with it. What I do know is that under legislation, the housing secretary has to give a report back to the legislature by December 31st, starting this year. So my guess is they're under the gun to assess as many as they can, determine what could be on that list, and move that on. So.
I just want to add to that to clarify that this 455310 that Luke is referring to doesn't mandate or require that it has to become affordable housing. It's more of the state will provide incentives to a community if in fact the facility is amenable to turn into affordable housing. But the state is not telling you this is what you must do. Just wanted to clarify that.
I was a bit unclear. I did ask the question whether that has to include reuse of the existing building. You seem very focused on the building itself and whether it be converted. So he asked things about, you know, how's the heating system, how's the roof, how's this, how's that. I'm a little unclear as far as getting a pad development site and building like workforce or affordable type housing, what type of assistance would be available there. But the town manager has directed me to reach out to the housing secretary to set up a meeting. I did that last week. I have not heard back.
All right. So the walkthrough went well.
As well as could be expected.
What kind of incentives would this legislation give to towns for turning their existing buildings into affordable housing. Do we know that, Mike?
Yeah, that's another thing that I'll address. The legislation refers to incentives. I will, along with the memo on deed restrictions for Oliver Watson, let me get for you exactly, if we know that right now, what those incentives are.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Luke. All right, town solicitors report.
Wait, is this my opportunity to, or are we going to talk about it in the communication item?
Go ahead.
What's your thinking?
We're on the item now. Go ahead.
So I wanted to have it as a communication item so that we could then discuss where we saw the property going or what we wanted to do with it. So to me, this conversation about the Warm Welcome House is a little bit premature for all of us because we haven't even been briefed. So I'd like at a future meeting to talk about it because I think we have to talk big picture about what's missing in the housing stock and where we see that best working. You know, obviously, you know, we talked about South Road. Clearly, the community thinks we're building something other than what I walked away thinking, you know, it's going to be homes that people own. There's going to be home ownership. It's not public housing where it's owned by the housing authority or an entity. People are going to actually be homeowners, correct? So, yes, but we have to continually talk about these things because there's a lot of misunderstanding. So then I want to talk about the Watson home and have the community be involved in it and not just because someone had a conversation on the side and then the staff is giving them, I mean, the architect's been in there, they've looked at it twice. What if there's another entity to give us something even more amazing? So I don't want to pigeonhole ourselves, but I do think that
If you could
that
mute
makes sense.
Please. Thank you.
It's okay, Norma. The gap for seniors exists. We can add to that. So I think that does make sense, but I wanted to have a conversation with all of you.
I feel like as far as in the senior housing arena, we have a lot or a fair number of federal housing opportunities. We also have like Peacedale House, so there's a lot of affordable units there. We have a lot of like 55 and older. We have some assisted living and a lot of nursing homes. But I personally think that what we lack in many ways is more like assisted living. Like, I think that our population, that it shows that the greatest number of people that are aging now are 80s and 90s. And so I think we need to really consider that because that is where the population is growing. And when people get into those ages, sometimes they need a bit more help with assisted living. So I personally would love to see assisted living in Watson House, but you know, it's going to have to be what we get. We need to get proposals, you know.
Right. I mean, like a comprehensive look at what that 2.7 acres can provide is what we need. I mean, maybe it's easy to just say we're going to only renovate the house and it'll only be X. But that 2.7 acres is a lot of.
Well, we could maybe even do like it in stages, you know? I mean, I would love to see little cottages out there, like
Right.
little granny cottages or like.
So how do we, just on the Watson House, what would be the next logical steps that we would take?
Oh, the memo. We need the memo.
Right.
To identify.
So we'll have a. Okay. And that.
That's step one.
Okay, so that's going to be on the agenda in 2 weeks, okay. And then as far as Wakefield School goes, I mean, I think people have a very vested interest in what it becomes. I am only interested in having the community have a conversation with us and tell us what they think would be important to go there. I mean, you hear lots of different things from lots of different people. So we just need to be creating opportunities for people to come and say, have you thought about this? Could you do this?
We should have a discussion with the EDC about it because they have an interest and they're working on things on Saugatucket River and it's right downtown and I feel like they'd like to have a conversation as to, I don't know,
Right.
brainstorm what their idea is.
Exactly. I mean, I would say we need to look at what another gap is, right? So if it's mixed use with some, you know, restaurants, retail space, economics on the first floor, and maybe apartments, smaller apartments. You know, we just had this whole conversation, there's no rentals, you can't rent. Maybe we should try to encourage a mixed-use place where there's rentals. So then if you look at the big picture of what the 3 projects are, you have South Road, smaller homes for either young professionals, young workforce housing people, or older people, right? Both ends.
Either.
Who downsize
Yeah.
or first size, right? And then, so there's that. And you have Watson House addressing the needs of seniors in some way. And then you have Wakefield School creating some economics and some apartments. As I say that, I know other people want us to protect the sledding hill, so we need to
Right.
we need to figure out how big that parcel is and then go there. But that would address 3 gaps that really exist, and honestly, maybe not necessarily fund the school project to the way that, I mean, if we just offload quickly, maybe that's the highest price, but that doesn't give us the best bang for the community. You know what I'm saying?
We have to balance, it's hard, you got to balance everything.
Right, right. So I want to, in 2 weeks, talk about Wakefield School in particular, because I know there's a lot of investment from a lot of community members on where it lands. So we can invite the EDC in 2 weeks, or, you know, we can, and then the
And just
community will
really
come.
let people know, because I've heard, like you said, there's a lot of different good ideas out there, so.
Yeah. We should talk about it at the regular scheduled meeting, though, not in a work session, right?
Right,
Okay, cool.
right.
All right. Anything else there?
Nope.
All right, we're going to move on. Town Solicitor's Report. Mike.
Okay, you wanted me to look into what the cost would be to do a title search on the General Rodman Cemetery. I gave you a quick memo. I reached out to a couple attorneys. The one who would be wonderful for this job is the type of thing he does is John Murphy. He said he would charge $250 per hour. You're looking at about 10 hours, $2,500. Either way, he would stop after 10 hours, or if he started getting into it and it looks like this is going to go on forever, he'll let us know. He's not going to drag us along. He'd be willing to do it. He could start the work if you wanted this work done in the February, March timeframe. Mr. Murray Gates, who was here the last time, and as you know, as the head of the Cemetery Commission, mentioned, hey, a title company could do this on the cheap, so to speak. And my office works with 4 or 5 title companies. We reach out to all of them. None of them will do this work because it's going to literally require someone to sit in the land evidence records for hours, and it just wouldn't be cost effective for them. So I think the decision that you have this evening is whether or not you want to go forward. Before we can do anything with this property, you know, one landowner may think he owns this. We're not sure. Without a title search, we're not going to know.
So just to add something to that, I did have a conversation with Mr. Fiore, and I had a conversation with Sharon Henderson from the Historical Commission, and he has agreed to, as per her request, she requested that the property be maintained 4 times a year. He has agreed to maintain the property 4 times a year, and that would allow the Historical Society to get in there and restore the stones. Sharon requested that he not provide any masonry work to the stones, and so I have communicated that to him, and Sharon has his phone number, and they're, you know, supposed to be coordinating this. So I'm not sure that we really need to pursue the title search when we have, you know, he's very willing to do this. And I know it sounds like there's been a lot of, it's been a problem, and there's been different organizations over the years, but I say that since he does express willingness to do this, and Sharon is also amenable to this, I think that we should try this before we spend money on.
And as I said at the last meeting, That's basically the way these historical cemeteries and private cemeteries are handled in many communities. It's not just South Kingstown. We have many, many here in South Kingstown. It's usually volunteers, community members who, or adjacent property owners that do this, because the burden, the financial burden that would be placed on the municipality to get someone in there maintaining and mowing grass and all of that.
And then multiply it by 200 cemeteries.
Right, because you had someone at your last meeting who mentioned, well, okay, good for the general, but what about us fighting people? So fighting men and women who.
Right.
So this, it's my report. You at least know that's about what it would cost. If at some point in the future you wanted to pursue this, you could.
I'm just confused. Before there was an issue about the property ownership, and now Mr. Fiore's fine to let them come and make, I don't know what's changed there.
I think that maybe, yeah, I'm not really sure that that's an accurate assessment of the situation. I think probably we'd need to have Mr. Fiore and Mr. Gates get into, have a discussion.
And Sharon Henderson is a town board member, or just, this is a, she's not on?
He's on the historical commission with Murray. She spoke here at a recent meeting.
Sharon Henderson is on the 300th Anniversary Committee. She's a big proponent of veterans. She comes from a long line of veterans, and that's why she's very protective of this. The issue I have is this. We would be going down a slippery slope. There are nearly, I think it was 177 truly historical cemeteries. I understand General Rodman's importance to the town, but I also understand all the privates, corporals, and sergeants that fought in all these wars as well. So if we do spend any money on the cemetery, and how could you say no to anyone else that comes forward in the future? We could end up doing title searches on dozens and dozens of these cemeteries, and then having to maintain them. So Mr. Fiore, he offered this months ago, from what I understand. Mr. Gates did not want to do it for whatever reason. So, you know, I would recommend the town work as best as they can to get volunteers to take care of these cemeteries, and the property owners that own them do the best they can to maintain them. But this is a major undertaking by the town, and it would be financially extremely expensive, not only do the research on them, but to maintain them if the town council ever decided to do that.
And the purpose of the title search, Mike, was from Mr. Gates's presentation several meetings ago about the town taking ownership of it.
Yes, and I advised that we could not do that without knowing who owned the property.
And as I recall, I asked at the time about surviving members of the Rodman family who may have an interest, and there was no answer.
Very well be. Thanks. Okay.
Right.
Anything else on this one? All right. The other one was, I also gave you a memo about the real estate conveyance tax and whether or not you could both reallocate monies from open space to the Affordable Housing Trust and to allocate on a going forward basis a percentage of the conveyance tax to go to flood. You can do both. You just have to do it inside of your budget cycle. You can reallocate in the capital improvement budget when you get there in December, January, and you can also, going forward, there's no restrictions from state law on how you use your portion of the conveyance taxes, so you could allocate that to affordable housing if you desired.
Excellent. Go ahead.
So if we wanted to, Jim's going to start to work on the capital budget in the next couple of weeks, probably already started. Do we want to give him some information now that we want to do something so that he can at least change the future budget for July 1 and not necessarily change midstream?
I'm more interested in allocating an account balance from the open space fund to the affordable housing fund.
Okay. That wouldn't be what I would want to do, but.
So I think it's a little early to discuss that now. Perhaps we can hold off on that.
I was going to say, thank you for a simple and elegant solution.
Thank you, Mike. Good job.
So you want to, but to go back to this for a second, you want to change it right now,
Nope, 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 nope.
but wait a sec. My proposal was in July for the next budget, to leave it the way it is right now.
Proposal is to keep the balances as is and then change the amount that goes toward each account going forward.
Yes.
My interest would be, let's take a look at the balances in each account and let's consider allocating an amount from one balance to another to increase the other one.
We understand each other. That's not what I would do, but it's okay. I understood what you want.
Save this discussion for a later date.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to move to communications. Item 12 is an email dated October 12, 2023, from Annie Kenny, President, Family Court Awareness Month, requesting a proclamation recognizing November as Family Court Awareness Month. What do we think? Sounds like a good one to me. Me too. All right, do I hear a motion?
Motion to proclaim November as Family Court Awareness Month.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Susan, perhaps you can write up the proclamation, and we're essentially enacting it now. Excellent. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to B, an email dated October 16, 2023, from Katie Sharon, Outreach and Marketing Specialist, Rhode Island District Office, U.S. Small Business Administration, requesting a proclamation recognizing October 30th through November 3rd as National Veterans Small Business Week. Another slam dunk one here.
Motion to approve item 12B.
Second.
Direct
All
the
right, we
town
have a
clerk.
motion and a second. Any discussion? Susan, this is another one you can write up for us and treat as if enacted tonight. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item C, an email dated October 18, 2023, from William Murray Gates requesting the town place a deed restriction on the Oliver Watson home. Murray is not here tonight. We spoke a little bit on this.
I move that we put this on file, and if Mr. Gates comes at the next meeting, because I anticipate he might, then we can discuss it at that time.
Okay.
We need more information from legal as well.
Yep.
Put it on file. What? Okay.
All right. Well, he can bring it up at some subsequent time.
Well, we're going to get information from Mike. We know what he would like us to do. We can either do it or not do it when we take the
Okay.
issue up.
All right.
Just keep it in our own minds.
All right, we got a motion to place on file.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 13, appointments.
I don't know the term for
We had,
Mr. Jeff.
Jeff?
Mi- I make a resolution that we appoint Mr. Jeff to alternate number 2 for a term that expires in 2026.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to the end here.
Do we want a resolution to appoint Darrell,
Nope, she cannot be appointed tonight,
oh,
right?
true. Oh,
Okay.
okay, sorry.
All right, it's going to bring us to the end here.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. See you next time.